The vastness of space was as indifferent as it was beautiful, a dark canvas sprinkled with a luminescence of distant stars. Aboard the human warship Whispers one word. The crew prepared for an encounter that would change the fate of humanity. Commanded by Captain Alara Voss, the ship was an engineering marvel, designed for both speed and stealth, equipped with technology that could send messages across galaxies. Alara stood on the bridge, the glow of control panels illuminating her determined face. The ship was sleek, a predator gliding through the void, its hull painted in deep navy, dotted with subtle gold accents. Behind her, the hum of machinery blended with the quiet chatter of her crew, a symphony of purpose and focus. Every member knew the stakes. The Whisper's one word was humanity's last line of defense against a ruthless alien coalition known as the Vorath. "Status report," Alara called, her voice steady despite the tension coiling in her gut. Lieutenant Samira Cade, the ship's operations officer, tapped a few keys on her console. "Long-range scanners are active, Captain. No sign of the Vorath fleet in this sector, but we have detected a series of energy fluctuations 3 light-years out." "Could it be them?" Alara's heart raced. "It's possible, but we can't confirm until we get closer," Samira replied, glancing at the tactical display. "We should proceed with caution." Alara nodded. Caution was a luxury they couldn't afford, yet the weight of her decisions pressed heavily on her. The Vorath had decimated entire colonies, leaving behind ruins and despair. Their warships were known for their overwhelming firepower and a strategy that exploited human weaknesses. But there was a rumor circulating among the fleet, a sliver of hope that the Whisper's one word might possess an edge. "The voice," Alara murmured, her thoughts drifting. The tales told of the ship's unique technology, a system that could generate a single resonating word in a frequency that disoriented alien minds, forcing them into retreat. It was a gamble, but desperation often bred the most unlikely solutions. "Captain," Samira's voice broke through her reverie. "Prepare the frequency modulation," Alara commanded, her decision firm. "If we encounter the Vorath, we'll use the voice." As the crew sprang into action, Alara took a moment to observe her surroundings. The bridge was a meld of human ingenuity. Screens flickered with data, a panoramic window framed the cosmos, and the air was charged with an electric mix of anticipation and fear. She thought of her crew, their families, and their dreams, all riding on the outcome of this mission. "Hyperspace jump in 5, announced Ensign Raj Patel, his fingers dancing over the controls. "Brace for transition," Alara ordered, securing herself in her seat. A chorus of acknowledgments echoed around her as the crew prepared for the leap. In an instant, the stars elongated, streaks of light blending into a whirlwind of color as the ship surged forward, propelled by the warp drive. Time and space twisted, the familiar sensations of gravity fluctuating before settling back into the norm as the Whisper's one word emerged into a new sector of the galaxy. "Scanning for Vorath ships," Samira said, her eyes narrowing at the readings. The anticipation was palpable, the silence thickening as everyone waited for the inevitable confrontation. Alara's breath caught when the sensors beeped, alerting them to an incoming signal. "What do we have, Samira?" "3 Vorath ships detected on the edge of the star system," she replied, her voice steady despite the intensity of the moment. "They're in formation, and their weapon systems are online." "Can we hail them?" Alara asked, knowing full well the likelihood of diplomacy with the Vorath. "They won't respond, Captain." "They never do," Samira said, her tone grave. "Then it's time to show them we're not afraid. Prepare for evasive maneuvers and set the modulation for the voice," Alara instructed. As the Whisper's one word approached the Vorath formation, the massive alien warships loomed like dark monoliths against the backdrop of stars. The Vorath ships were menacing, their surfaces glinting with ominous, sharp angles, and their engines pulsed with a sickly green light. "Captain, they're opening fire," shouted Raj, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Evasive maneuvers, now," Alara commanded, her heart pounding in her chest. The ship lurched as it veered to the side, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy blasts that streaked past, illuminating the darkness with explosive flashes. The crew worked seamlessly, their training evident as they adjusted their tactics in real time. Samira monitored the readings, her brow furrowed with concentration. Shields holding at 70%, but they're weakening. Ilara's eyes darted to the tactical display, calculating their options. We need to position ourselves behind their rear flank. Samira, get the modulation ready. Yes, Captain. The ship maneuvered with grace, darting between incoming shots while returning fire with its own weaponry. Laser beams shot from the Whisper's one word, striking the shields of the nearest Vorath vessel, but the impact barely seemed to phase it. Now, Ilara shouted as they finally positioned themselves for a clear shot. Modulation set, Samira confirmed, her fingers flying over the console. On your command. Ilara took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Engage the voice. The ship reverberated with a deep, resonant tone, a single word amplified through the frequencies, flee. The sound rippled through the void, a shockwave of psychic energy aimed at the Vorath vessels. For a moment, time seemed to suspend. The Vorath ships hesitated, their tactical systems faltering. The crew of the Whisper's one word held their breath, witnessing the incredible power of the resonance. Then, chaos erupted. The Vorath ships shuddered as if gripped by an unseen force, and one by one, they began to break formation, their engines flaring to life as they retreated into the depths of space. Captain, it's working! They're fleeing, Samira shouted, disbelief mingling with triumph in her voice. Ilara allowed herself a small smile, her heart racing with exhilaration. Maintain pursuit, but keep weapons ready. We can't afford to be complacent. The Whisper's one word surged forward, tracking the retreating ships. The echoes of their flight reverberated in the void, a testament to the unforeseen power of the human spirit. In that moment, Ilara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The tide had turned, and they would not go quietly into the night. As the alien ships disappeared into the darkness, Ilara looked at her crew, pride swelling in her chest. Today, we showed them that humanity will not be broken. Let's prepare for our next move. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over, and as long as the Whisper's one word sailed through the cosmos, its whispers would linger in the minds of those who dared to challenge humanity's resolve. The aftermath of the skirmish lingered in the air like the residue of a storm. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the Whisper's one word, her fingers resting on the console, still buzzing with the adrenaline of battle. The glow of the control panels illuminated the determined faces of her crew, but a shadow of concern hung over them. They had won this encounter, yet the war was far from over. Status report, Samira, Ilara said, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her mind. Scanners are clear, Captain. The Vorath fleet has retreated, but we need to assess the damage and resupply, Samira replied, her fingers dancing across the touch screen. Shields are down to 50%, and we've sustained some minor hull damage. Nothing we can't handle, but we should get to a secure base for repairs. Ilara nodded, her gaze drifting to the panoramic window. Stars shimmered in the void, but beyond them lay the fear of what could come next. Set a course for the nearest Federation outpost. We'll regroup and resupply before our next mission. Yes, Captain. Samira began typing in the coordinates, and the ship shifted into motion, its engines humming with a low thrum. As they left the battlefield behind, Ilara felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The Whisper's one word had proved its worth, but she knew the Vorath were relentless. They would return, perhaps with a greater force or more insidious tactics. She glanced around the bridge, taking in her crew, the tension in their shoulders, the determined focus in their eyes. They had fought bravely, but each victory brought with it the specter of loss. Lieutenant Patel, open a channel to Fleet Command, Ilara instructed, her voice carrying authority. Aye, Captain. Channel open, Raj replied, his fingers deftly navigating the controls. Ilara took a breath, preparing to report their encounter. This is Captain Ilara Voss of the Whisper's one word. We have engaged and repelled a Vorath fleet. Current status, minor hull damage, and depleted shield levels. Requesting immediate resupply and repairs at the nearest Federation outpost. The comms officer on the other end responded promptly. Acknowledged, Captain. We'll relay your status to the base. Be advised, Vorath activity has increased in surrounding sectors. Stay vigilant. Understood, Alara replied, her resolve hardening. We'll keep our eyes open. Whispers one word out. As the channel closed, Alara felt a weight settle on her chest. She turned back to her crew, her expression serious. We need to prepare for whatever comes next. Samira, run a diagnostic on our weapon systems. We may need to upgrade before the next engagement. Aye, Captain, Samira replied, her brow furrowing with concentration as she pulled up the necessary data. Alara walked to the viewing window, gazing out into the vast expanse of space. It felt both beautiful and terrifying, a reminder of how small they were in the grand scheme of the universe. But it was their home, humanity's frontier, and she would do everything in her power to protect it. As the ship hurtled through the cosmos, Alara's thoughts drifted to the mysterious resonance that had turned the tide in their favor. The whispers of a single word had echoed through the void, sending the Vorath into a panic. It was a phenomenon that defied explanation, and yet it had worked. She wondered if they could harness it further, expand its capabilities. Captain, Samira's voice broke through her thoughts, and Alara turned back to the bridge. I've completed the diagnostic, Samira said, her eyes alight with urgency. Our weapon systems are functional, but we could improve the resonance modulation for greater impact. Do it, Alara commanded. If we can amplify the voice, we might gain an even greater advantage against the Vorath. Yes, Captain. Samira's fingers flew over the controls, and the ship's systems began to whir and hum with energy. As the crew focused on their tasks, Alara felt a sense of camaraderie blossoming around her. They were more than just a crew. They were a family forged in the fires of conflict. She moved among them, offering encouragement and answering questions, her leadership bolstered by their shared purpose. Hours passed, and as they approached the Federation outpost, the familiar sight of a bustling space station came into view. Its metallic structures glinted under the light of nearby stars, bustling with shuttles and smaller crafts. The sight filled Alara with a sense of relief. They were safe, if only for a moment. Docking procedures initiated, Raj announced, his voice breaking through the hum of activity. Prepare to disembark and initiate repairs, Alara ordered. And let's ensure we have sufficient supplies for the next phase of our mission. As the Whisper's one word secured itself to the docking bay, Alara gathered her crew for a brief meeting in the common area. The space was utilitarian, with metal walls and functional seating, but it felt like a sanctuary after the chaos of battle. Everyone, listen up, Alara began, her voice resonating with authority. We've achieved a significant victory against the Vorath, but we must remain vigilant. Intelligence reports indicate they're regrouping and planning their next move. The crew nodded, their expressions serious. I want everyone to take advantage of our time here, Alara continued. Get some rest, but also prepare for upgrades. We need to ensure our systems are at peak performance. Captain, what about the resonance modulation? Samira asked, her curiosity piqued. Alara met her gaze. We'll experiment with it here. I want to know just how far we can push its limits. It might just be our key to turning the tide of this war. The crew dispersed, and Alara felt a sense of determination wash over her. They were on the cusp of something greater, a chance to not only defend their home, but to reclaim the future of humanity. As she stepped out of the common area, she spotted a familiar face, Commander Alex Mendoza, her second in command. Alex was a seasoned officer, her years of experience etched into her features. She approached Alara, her expression thoughtful. Captain, Alex began, the Vorath are formidable, but I've been reviewing our engagement. We can't rely solely on the resonance. What if they adapt? Alara considered this, nodding slowly. You're right. We need a multifaceted strategy. The resonance is a tool, not a crutch. What do you suggest? We should conduct simulated drills, preparing for different scenarios. If the Vorath counter our resonance, we need to be ready with tactics that play to our strengths, Alex proposed, her eyes sharp with insight. Agreed, Elara said, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her. Let's set up those drills and involve the entire crew. We can't let our guard down. They made their way to the command center, where Elara began coordinating with the crew. She felt the energy in the air shift, the collective determination forging a bond stronger than any fear. Each member of the crew contributed ideas, suggestions flowing like a river of ingenuity. As the hours turned into a flurry of activity, the ship transformed into a hive of preparation. Engineers worked on the resonance modulation, while others fine-tuned weapon systems. Elara and Alex led simulations, testing various combat scenarios and strategies. "Ready for the next drill?" Alex asked, her tone teasing. "Always," Elara replied with a grin. "All right, crew, gather round," Alex shouted, her voice booming across the command center. The crew quickly assembled, eager for the next challenge. Elara addressed them, her voice clear and unwavering. "Today, we're going to put our skills to the test. The Vorath won't hesitate to exploit our weaknesses, and neither will we. Let's show them what we're made of." With a shared sense of purpose, the crew plunged into the drills. Elara felt alive in the chaos, each order igniting the spark of determination in her heart. They practiced evasive maneuvers, combat scenarios, and emergency protocols. The ship became a living entity, the crew moving as one, a well-oiled machine. As the drills concluded, exhaustion settled in, but the spirits remained high. Elara gathered the crew once more, pride swelling in her chest. "You all performed admirably. We're ready for whatever the Vorath throw at us. Together, we will face this war head-on." After the meeting, Elara retreated to her quarters, her mind still racing with possibilities. She reflected on the resonance modulation, its power lingering in the back of her mind. If they could refine it, who knew what doors it might open? Elara settled at her desk, pulling up data from the recent battle. The frequencies, the patterns, there had to be a way to enhance their effectiveness. As she immersed herself in the analysis, the hours slipped away, the universe outside her window spinning in the quiet of space. Suddenly, a notification pinged on her console, breaking her concentration. It was from Samira. "Captain, you need to see this," the operations officer said, urgency threading her tone. Elara rushed to the bridge, where Samira was already pulling up the latest intel. The screen displayed a cluster of Vorath ships gathering in a neighboring sector. The bridge of the Whispers one word buzzed with urgency. Captain Elara Voss stared at the display screen, her heart pounding as she absorbed the sight of the Vorath ships congregating in a formation that spelled trouble. They were regrouping, and it looked like they were preparing for a significant offensive. "Samira, zoom in on their fleet formation," Elara commanded, her mind racing. "Yes, Captain," Samira replied, her fingers flying over the controls. The screen shifted, displaying a closer view of the Vorath warships. Their dark, angular hulls gleamed ominously against the backdrop of space, and Elara's instincts screamed that something was amiss. "Commander Mendoza, what do you make of their formation?" Elara asked, turning to her second-in-command. Alex studied the screen intently. "It looks like they're consolidating their forces. This isn't just a show of strength. They're likely planning a coordinated attack. They could be trying to overwhelm our defenses." Elara nodded, her mind racing through potential strategies. "We can't let them catch us off guard. We need to inform Fleet Command and prepare our defenses. Get us ready for battle. Alex, we'll need to reposition to a more strategic location." "Understood, Captain." "Raj, plot a course that will keep us out of their direct line of fire, but allows us to monitor their movements." "Aye, Commander," Raj replied, quickly adjusting the ship's trajectory. Elara turned back to Samira. "Prepare the resonance modulation system for immediate use. If the Vorath engage, we need to be ready to deploy our new tactics." "Already on it, Captain," Samira said, her fingers deftly navigating through the ship's systems. As the Whisper's one word glided into a more concealed position, The crew fell into a rhythm of preparedness. Alara felt a surge of adrenaline as she oversaw the operation, her focus sharpening with every passing moment. They were on the precipice of a confrontation that could change the tide of the war. "Captain," Raj called, his eyes darting between his screens. "We're receiving a transmission from Fleet Command." "Put it through," Alara said, her heart quickening. A stern voice echoed through the bridge, the image of Admiral Chen appearing on the main screen. "Captain Voss, we've been monitoring the Vorath movements. Your intel on their gathering is invaluable. We believe they're preparing for a multi-pronged attack on key Federation outposts." "We're aware, Admiral," Alara replied, her voice steady. "We're currently repositioning to gather intelligence and prepare for engagement. We have the resonance modulation system ready, but we'll need additional support from the fleet if we're to counter their numbers." "We're mobilizing forces now," Admiral Chen said. "But we need you to hold your position and monitor their activity. If they strike, we want you to act as a forward defense." "Yes, sir," Alara replied, her resolve hardening. "We won't let them breach our lines." "Good luck, Captain. We're counting on you." The screen flickered off, leaving Alara with the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. "Status update?" she asked, turning to Samira. "Vorath ships are still in formation, but it looks like they're preparing to move," Samira said, her fingers moving rapidly over the console. "We should be able to track their vectors." "Raj, keep our sensors on them," Alara instructed. "Alex, I want you to coordinate with Samira. Prepare a tactical analysis of their formation. We need to identify any weaknesses we can exploit." "Aye, Captain," Alex said, her brow furrowed in concentration as she and Samira began collaborating on the tactical display. Alara watched as they worked, the intensity in the room palpable. They were a team, each member contributing their skills to a singular goal: to protect humanity from the Vorath threat. "Captain, the Vorath fleet is moving," Raj announced, his voice sharp with urgency. "They're splitting into 3 groups." Alara's heart sank. "What's their heading?" "Group 1 is headed toward Outpost Theta 7. Group 2 is moving towards Outpost Alpha 3. And the 3rd group appears to be heading straight for us," Raj reported. "Damn it," Alara muttered under her breath. "We can't let them hit Theta 7. That outpost is critical for our supply lines. Samira, I want you to keep a close eye on their movements. Raj, plot a course to intercept Group 1. We need to protect Theta 7. "On it," Raj replied, adjusting the ship's trajectory. "Commander Mendoza, gather the crew. We're going to prepare for a defensive engagement," Alara ordered, her mind racing through strategies. As Alex moved to rally the crew, Alara turned back to Samira. "How quickly can we deploy the resonance modulation if we need to?" "Assuming everything is in working order, I can have it ready within minutes," Samira replied, her voice confident. "Good. I want to be ready to deploy it at a moment's notice," Alara said, her determination unyielding. With a sense of urgency, the crew scrambled into action, the bridge buzzing with preparation. Alara felt the familiar thrill of battle beginning to rise within her. This was what she was trained for. This was her calling. "Crew ready?" Alex asked, her voice steady as she returned to the bridge. "Almost," Samira said, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "Then let's get to it." "We're not going to let them take Theta 7, Alara declared, her voice resonating with authority. The ship surged forward, gliding through the void as they closed the distance to the Vorath group. The formation of alien ships grew larger on their screens, their dark silhouettes ominous against the backdrop of stars. "Captain, they're picking up speed," Raj reported, his fingers flying over the controls. "It looks like they've identified us." "Deploy countermeasures," Alara ordered. "Let's keep them off balance." As the Whisper's one word prepared for engagement, Alara's heart raced. The resonance system was their wild card, but she hoped it wouldn't be necessary. She wanted to protect her crew and her home without resorting to overwhelming force. "Enemy ships are targeting us," Raj shouted, his voice edged with tension. Evasive maneuvers, Elara commanded, her instincts kicking in. The ship twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding the energy blasts that surged toward them. The Whisper's one word felt like an extension of herself, responding to her commands with grace and agility. "Shields holding at 70%, Samira called out, her focus unwavering. "Prepare to return fire," Elara shouted, determination fueling her words. "Target their engines first. We can't let them regroup." The crew sprang into action, weapon systems activating as the ship responded to her commands. Elara's heart raced as they returned fire, laser beams streaking through the void and striking the nearest Vorath vessel. "Direct hit," Samira exclaimed, her excitement palpable. "Their engines are destabilizing." "Keep targeting them. Don't let up," Elara urged, her voice a mix of adrenaline and command. As the Vorath ships began to falter, Elara felt a surge of hope. Maybe they could hold them off. The resonance modulation could still be a backup if needed, but for now, they were gaining the upper hand. "Captain, they're breaking formation," Raj shouted, his eyes wide with surprise. "Looks like they're trying to escape." "Don't let them get away," Elara commanded, her voice resolute. "We need to stop them before they can regroup with the others." As the Whisper's one word surged forward, Elara's instincts kicked into high gear. The Vorath ships were scrambling, their coordinated efforts collapsing under the pressure of their attacks. "Prepare the resonance modulation," she ordered, her heart racing. "If they attempt to regroup, we'll deploy it." "Yes, Captain," Samira replied, her fingers moving swiftly across the console. The Vorath ships continued to falter, but just as Elara thought they might secure a victory, a bright flash lit up the void. "Captain, incoming fire," Raj shouted, his voice a mixture of alarm and urgency. "Brace for impact," Elara commanded, her heart pounding as she secured herself in her seat. The ship shuddered as energy blasts slammed into the shields, the impact reverberating through the vessel. Alarms blared, and Elara gritted her teeth, fighting the instinct to panic. "Shields holding at 50%, Samira reported, her voice steady amidst the chaos. "Return fire, target that lead ship," Elara commanded, refusing to let fear take hold. With determination, the crew sprang into action, the ship firing back with renewed vigor. Laser beams lit up the darkness, striking the lead Vorath ship with precision. "Captain, their shields are weakening," Raj exclaimed, excitement mingling with urgency. "Keep the pressure on," Elara shouted, her heart racing. "We can't let them regroup." Just as it seemed they might seize victory, the lead Vorath ship activated a pulse weapon, sending out a wave of energy that knocked the Whisper's one word off course. "Steady," Elara shouted, gripping her console as the ship rocked. The Whisper's one word lurched violently as the pulse wave struck, jolting the crew in their seats. Elara Voss gripped the edge of her console, her heart pounding as alarms blared across the bridge. "Status report," she shouted over the cacophony of warnings. "Systems are fluctuating," Samira Cade called back, her fingers dancing over the controls. "Shields are down to 30%, and we've lost primary power to the weapon systems." Elara's mind raced. They were at a critical juncture. If they didn't regain control soon, they could be overwhelmed by the Vorath forces. She could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, the lives of her crew resting squarely on her shoulders. "Raj, can you reroute auxiliary power to the weapons?" she asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I'll try, Captain," Raj Patel replied, his brow furrowed in concentration as he began frantically typing commands into his console. "Samira, initiate emergency protocols. Engage backup systems for the shields. We need to stabilize this ship," Elara commanded, her tone brokering no argument. "Yes, Captain," Samira replied, her focus laser-sharp. As the crew worked together, Elara glanced at the tactical display, where the Vorath fleet remained a looming threat. The lead ship, now damaged but still operational, was regrouping with its allies. They couldn't afford to let them escape. "Commander Mendoza," Elara said, turning to her second-in-command, can we still deploy the resonance modulation? Only if we can restore power to the primary systems, Captain, Alex replied, urgency lacing her words. It'll take time, but we might be able to do it if Raj can work his magic. I'll make it happen, Raj said, determination in his eyes. Just keep the Vorath off our backs for a few moments longer. Alara nodded, determination surging within her. Then we'll make our stand here. Alex, prepare the crew for a defensive maneuver. We'll keep them occupied while Raj works. As the crew focused on their tasks, Alara felt the atmosphere shift. The ship was alive, a living entity fighting for survival. They were in this together, each member contributing their strength. Captain, the Vorath are closing in, Raj warned, his voice rising with urgency. Activate emergency flares, Alara commanded. Let's distract them and give Raj the time he needs. Flares deploying, Samira confirmed. The Whisper's one word released a series of brilliant flares into space, illuminating the darkness. The Vorath ships momentarily shifted their focus, drawn by the bright bursts of light. Now's our chance, Alara shouted. Return fire. Target the nearest ship. The crew sprang into action, the ship lurching as it fired back at the Vorath fleet. Laser beams arced through space, striking one of the alien vessels and causing it to shudder. Direct hit, Samira exclaimed, her excitement palpable. Their shields are failing. Keep the pressure on. We need to take them out before they can regroup, Alara urged, her voice firm. As the Whisper's one word continued to fire, Alara could see the Vorath ships scrambling. The distraction had bought them precious moments, but she knew it wouldn't last. They had to restore their systems. Raj, how's it going? Alara asked, glancing over at him. I'm rerouting power now, Captain, but it's going to take a few minutes. I need you to hold them off, Raj replied, his fingers a blur on the console. The Vorath retaliated, energy blasts slamming into the ship's hull, shaking it violently. Alarms blared as the shields dropped lower, the ship's systems straining under the pressure. Shields at 20%, Samira shouted, her voice edged with tension. We need to. Keep firing, Alara commanded, her focus unwavering. Don't let them breach the hull. With fierce determination, the crew fired back, targeting the nearest Vorath ship. Alara felt the adrenaline pumping through her veins as they fought back against overwhelming odds. Each moment was a dance of chaos and focus, the thrill of battle igniting their spirits. Captain, I'm getting something on the sensors, Samira shouted, her voice suddenly sharp with alarm. It's a message. From whom? Alara asked, her curiosity piqued. Fleet Command. They've dispatched reinforcements. They'll be here in 15 minutes, Samira reported, relief flooding her voice. 15 minutes. We need to buy ourselves time, Alara said, determination settling in her gut. Raj, how's that power rerouting going? Almost there, Captain. Just a little longer, he shouted back, his focus intense. All right, crew. We need to hold out until reinforcements arrive. Prepare to activate the resonance modulation as soon as we have power, Alara commanded, her heart pounding in rhythm with the ship's struggles. As the battle raged on, Alara felt a sense of clarity. They were in the thick of it, but this was their moment to shine. They could turn the tide. Vorath ships are advancing again, Raj warned, his voice urgent. They've regrouped and are targeting our weak points. Samira, target their lead ship. Focus all fire, Alara shouted, her voice resonating with command. Locking on, Samira replied, her fingers deftly moving over the controls. As the crew focused their energy on the lead Vorath ship, Alara felt a surge of determination. They were not going to lose this fight. Firing, Samira declared, and the ship unleashed a barrage of laser fire, striking the lead ship and causing it to stagger. Shields are down to 10%, Raj shouted, panic creeping into his voice. Hold together, Alara urged, her heart racing. We need to stabilize. Just as she thought they might falter, Raj's voice rang out, filled with determination. Power rerouted. We have primary systems back online. Activate resonance modulation, Ilara commanded, her voice sharp with urgency. Ready, Samira confirmed, her eyes blazing with determination. Ilara took a breath, the weight of the moment settling in. Deploy it. The ship reverberated as the resonance modulation system activated, a powerful wave of sound resonating through the void. The single word echoed out into the darkness: flee. The Vorath ships hesitated, confusion rippling through their formations. For a brief moment, time seemed to suspend. Now's our chance. Keep firing, Ilara shouted, her heart racing as they took advantage of the momentary disarray. As the Whisper's one word unleashed another barrage of fire, the Vorath ships began to falter. One by one, they began to retreat, their formations breaking apart as panic spread through their ranks. "Captain, it's working! They're breaking!" Samira exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief. "Don't let up! We need to drive them back," Ilara commanded, her heart soaring as the tide began to turn. As the Vorath ships started to flee, Ilara felt a swell of triumph within her. They had managed to fend off the attack, but they couldn't lose sight of the bigger picture. "Raj, keep an eye on the remaining Vorath ships. We need to ensure they don't regroup," she instructed. "Yes, Captain," Raj replied, his fingers moving deftly over the controls. "Alex, prepare a damage report," Ilara said, her voice steady. "We need to assess our condition after this battle." "Aye, Captain," Alex said, her focus returning to the task at hand. As the crew began to assess the aftermath of the battle, Ilara felt a sense of relief wash over her. They had survived, and they had protected Theta 7. But the war was far from over, and she knew the Vorath would be back. "Captain, we've sustained minor hull damage, but nothing critical," Samira reported. "Shields are low, but can be restored with time." "Good. Let's get to work on repairs and replenish our supplies," Ilara ordered, her mind already racing ahead to their next steps. As the crew began the process of restoring the ship, Ilara took a moment to breathe. They had fought hard, and their victory today was significant. But the echoes of the battle still lingered in her mind, a reminder of the challenges they would continue to face. "Captain," Raj said, his voice cutting through her thoughts, "we're receiving another transmission from Fleet Command." "Put it through," Ilara replied, her heart racing with anticipation. The screen flickered to life, and Admiral Chen appeared once more, his expression serious. "Captain Voss, we've received reports from other outposts. The Vorath are launching attacks across multiple sectors. We need you to stay vigilant and assist in any way you can." "Understood, Admiral," Ilara replied, her mind racing with the implications. "We'll continue to monitor and defend our position." "Good luck, Captain. We're counting on you," Admiral Chen said before the screen faded. As the transmission ended, Ilara felt the weight of responsibility return. The war was escalating, and they were on the front lines. The Whisper's one word floated in the aftermath of the battle, a solitary sentinel in the vastness of space. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the viewport, each one a reminder of the universe's fragility. The crew worked efficiently around her, but a tension lingered in the air, a collective awareness of the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. "Captain," Samira Cade said, her voice breaking through Ilara's thoughts. "We've restored power to the primary systems, and the shields are recharging, but we still need to conduct a thorough damage assessment." "Understood, Samira," Ilara replied, turning her attention back to her first officer. "How long will it take to fully repair the hull?" "Assuming we have the necessary materials, I'd estimate a couple of hours. We'll need to send out a drone to assess the damage more thoroughly," Samira explained, her brow furrowed with concentration. "Get that drone deployed," Ilara ordered, "and keep monitoring the Vorath movements. I don't want any surprises." As Samira set to work, Alex Mendoza stepped forward, her expression serious. "Captain, I've compiled a report on our engagement with the Vorath. It's clear they're evolving their tactics. They're becoming more coordinated and aggressive." "Any insight into their next move?" Ilara asked, crossing her arms as she leaned against the console. Given their last attack, I'd expect them to strike at multiple points again, trying to overwhelm our defenses. They might also try to target key assets to weaken our supply lines further, Alex replied. Then we need to be proactive, Ilara said, her mind racing. Let's send out scouts to nearby sectors and gather intel. We can't wait for them to come to us. A wise decision, Captain, Alex acknowledged. I'll coordinate with Raj to dispatch the drones. As Alex moved to relay the orders, Ilara felt a sense of urgency swell within her. This was not just about their immediate survival, it was about the survival of the entire Federation. If the Vorath were ramping up their attacks, they needed to find a way to counter it. Samira, I want you to analyze the data from our last encounter. Look for patterns or weaknesses we can exploit, Ilara instructed. Right away, Captain, Samira replied, her fingers flying across the console. As the crew worked diligently, Ilara felt a weight settle on her. She was proud of them. They had held their ground when it mattered most. But pride didn't win wars, and she knew they had to remain sharp. Raj, how's the drone deployment coming? Ilara called out, looking toward the operations station. Almost ready, Captain, Raj Patel replied, his focus unwavering as he worked to prepare the drone for launch. We should have it out in a minute. Good. Keep me updated on its progress, Ilara said, turning her gaze back to the stars. As the drone launched from the Whisper's one word, Ilara felt a momentary flicker of hope. Perhaps they could gather valuable information that would help them prepare for the next Vorath incursion. Captain, the drone is transmitting live data now, Samira reported, her voice steady. I'm analyzing the feed. Anything noteworthy? Ilara asked, her heart racing. Looks like there are several debris fields scattered throughout this sector. Some of them could potentially hide Vorath remnants, Samira said, her brow furrowing as she scrutinized the data. We should investigate. Agreed. Let's send a team to scout those areas, Ilara instructed. We need to gather as much intel as possible before they make their next move. Alex rejoined the conversation, her expression grave. Captain, while we're preparing to scout, we should also consider a more aggressive stance. If we can locate their supply lines, we could disrupt their operations before they can strike again. Ilara considered Alex's words. That could put us at risk, but if we can strike first, it may give us the upper hand. Exactly, Alex replied, her eyes sparkling with determination. We can't let them dictate the pace of this conflict. All right. Let's gather a small team and prepare for a scouting mission, Ilara said, her decision made. We'll assess the debris fields first, then see if we can track down their supply routes. Raj looked up from his station, concern etched on his face. Captain, I just received a message from Fleet Command. They're concerned about our next move and have advised caution. Caution is a luxury we can't afford right now, Ilara replied, her voice firm. We're at the forefront of this war, and we need to act decisively. If the Vorath are escalating, we need to stay one step ahead. Understood, Captain, Raj said, though the worry remained in his eyes. As they prepared for the mission, Ilara gathered her small team in the briefing room. She looked around at the faces of her crew, each one a mix of resolve and apprehension. All right, team, Ilara began, her voice steady. We're heading out to scout the nearby debris fields. Our primary objective is to gather intelligence on any Vorath remnants and locate potential supply lines. Alex, you'll lead the away team. Alex nodded, her expression serious. We'll be in and out quickly. Our goal is to minimize exposure to Vorath forces. Samira, keep monitoring our surroundings from the ship. If anything changes, we'll need to know immediately, Ilara said, her eyes locking with Samira's. Got it, Captain, Samira replied, her focus unwavering. Raj, maintain communication with the away team and monitor our position, Ilara instructed. Aye, Captain, Raj said, his fingers dancing across the console. With the plan set, Ilara led her crew to the hangar bay, where a small shuttle awaited them. The atmosphere was tense, but Alara felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was the essence of their mission together. They could face whatever challenges lay ahead. As they boarded the shuttle, Alara took a moment to steady her breathing. "Remember, stay alert. We don't know what we'll encounter out there." Alex nodded, her expression resolute. "We'll keep our eyes open, Captain. We're ready for anything." The shuttle powered up, and Alara guided it away from the Whisper's one word, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension as they moved further from the safety of the ship. Stars streaked past them, the vastness of space both beautiful and daunting. Approaching the first debris field, Raj's voice came through the comms. "Keep your scanners active." "Copy that," Alex replied, her focus sharp. As they navigated through the scattered remnants of previous battles, the atmosphere inside the shuttle shifted. The debris floated in silence, remnants of both ships and lives lost in the ongoing conflict. "Samira, any signs of Vorath activity?" Alara asked, her heart racing. "Negative, Captain," Samira's voice crackled over the comms. "But I'm picking up some unusual energy readings in the area. It could be residual from a Vorath ship." "Let's investigate," Alara said, her instincts guiding her. "Alex, take us closer." The shuttle maneuvered carefully, weaving through the wreckage until they reached the source of the energy readings. A derelict Vorath ship floated amidst the debris, its dark hull a stark contrast against the glittering stars. "Scan for life signs," Alara ordered. Raj quickly complied, his brow furrowing as he monitored the readings. "I'm not detecting any life signs, but the energy fluctuations are consistent with Vorath technology." Ilara's mind raced. Could it be operational? "Possibly," Alex replied, her voice steady. "We should approach with caution." "Agreed. Let's dock with the derelict and conduct a thorough examination," Ilara said, her heart pounding with anticipation. As they maneuvered the shuttle closer, Alara felt a surge of determination. This could be the breakthrough they needed, valuable intelligence that could shift the tide of the war. Once docked, the crew prepared to disembark, securing their gear and weapons. Ilara led the way, stepping into the airlock and feeling a thrill of anticipation. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and she could sense her crew's resolve as they moved into the unknown. "Stay sharp," Ilara whispered, her senses heightened. "We don't know what we might find." As they stepped onto the derelict ship, the silence was palpable. The interior was dark and foreboding, the flickering lights casting eerie shadows on the walls. Ilara led the way, her pulse quickening with each step. "Keep your scanners active," she instructed, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex nodded, her gaze scanning the room. "I'm picking up some residual power readings. There may still be functioning systems on board." "Let's head to the control room. We might find valuable intel there," Alara suggested, her instincts guiding her forward. As they moved deeper into the ship, the atmosphere grew heavier, the silence almost suffocating. The walls were lined with strange symbols, remnants of the Vorath's enigmatic culture. "Captain, this ship is like a ghost," Alex murmured, her voice tinged with awe. As they ventured deeper into the derelict Vorath ship, Alara Voss felt the weight of history pressing in on her. The eerie silence was punctuated only by the soft hum of their gear and the distant creaking of the ship, a testament to the battles it had once fought and lost. "Stay close," Ilara whispered, glancing back at her team. Alex Mendoza, Samira Cade, and Raj Patel followed her closely, their expressions a mix of determination and apprehension. "Captain, I'm getting a strong energy reading from that direction," Raj said, pointing toward a corridor that veered sharply to the left. The dim lights flickered as if hesitant to illuminate the path ahead. "Let's check it out," Ilara replied, her curiosity piqued. That energy could provide us with valuable intel, or at the very least, some insight into their technology. They moved cautiously, weapons drawn and senses heightened. The air grew cooler as they entered the corridor, the atmosphere thick with a sense of foreboding. The walls were adorned with intricate patterns, alien glyphs that pulsed faintly with residual energy. Do you think these symbols could provide any clues? Samira asked, tracing her fingers along the strange markings. Possibly, Elara replied, glancing at the symbols. If we can decipher them, we might understand their intentions better. Let's focus on finding that energy source first, Alex suggested, her eyes scanning the area. We can analyze the symbols later. Elara nodded, leading the way down the corridor. The sound of their footsteps echoed eerily, each step drawing them closer to the unknown. As they approached a large door at the end of the hallway, Raj's voice crackled through the comms. Captain, the energy readings are spiking. It's definitely coming from behind that door. Let's get a closer look, Elara said, stepping forward. She pressed a hand against the door's surface, feeling a pulse beneath her fingertips. Stand back, Alex warned, moving to the side as Elara activated the door's control panel. The door hissed open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in dim blue light. The room was a cavernous space filled with strange machinery and an array of glowing devices, all pulsating in time with the energy readings. At the center stood a large console, alien in design, its surface covered in the same symbols that adorned the ship's walls. Wow, Raj breathed, stepping inside. This is incredible. Elara moved closer to the console, her heart racing. This could hold the key to understanding their technology, if we can decipher it. Let's see if we can access any data, Samira said, already moving to the console. Her fingers danced over the controls, attempting to unlock its secrets. As Samira worked, the air grew thick with tension. The machinery around them hummed ominously, the energy levels fluctuating wildly. Elara felt a strange sensation creeping over her, a mix of excitement and dread. Samira, be careful, Alex warned, her gaze fixed on the glowing devices. We don't know what we're dealing with here. I know, Samira replied, her focus unwavering. Just give me a moment. Suddenly, the console emitted a sharp beep, and the room was flooded with light. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and a holographic projection materialized above the console. It displayed a map of the sector, dotted with points of interest, many marked in red. Look at that, Raj exclaimed, his eyes wide. It's a mapping system. Elara stepped closer to the projection, her heart racing as she studied the data. These must be their supply lines. If we can analyze this information, we can disrupt their operations. The realization sent a surge of adrenaline through her. They had the potential to gain a strategic advantage, something that could turn the tide of the war. Samira, download everything you can, Elara instructed. We need to get this back to the Whisper's one word. On it, Captain, Samira said, her fingers flying over the console. As Samira worked, the humming of the machinery intensified, the energy levels rising dangerously. Elara could feel the tension in the air, a crackling sensation that made her skin prickle. Something's not right, Alex said, her voice low. I think we should leave. Just a few more seconds, Samira urged, her eyes locked on the data streaming onto her device. I'm almost done. Now, Elara insisted, a sense of urgency rising in her chest. We need to go. I don't like how this energy is building. Just as Samira finished the download, the room shook violently. The holographic projection flickered and distorted, and the machinery began to emit a high-pitched whine. Move, Elara shouted, her instincts kicking in. The team bolted for the exit, adrenaline propelling them forward as the ship rumbled around them. As they raced down the corridor, Elara glanced back at the console, which was now engulfed in pulsating light. The alien symbols seemed to writhe and shift, almost alive with energy. Faster, Alex urged, her voice sharp as they reached the airlock. They made it just in time, the door slamming shut behind them as the ship erupted into chaos. Alarms blared, and the floor trembled beneath their feet. Raj, get us out of here, Elara commanded as she scrambled to the controls of the shuttle. I'm on it, Captain, Raj shouted, his hands moving swiftly over the controls as he initiated the launch sequence. The shuttle lurched as it broke free from the derelict ship, the chaos of the Vorath vessel fading into the distance. Ilara took a deep breath, the adrenaline still surging through her veins. "Status report," she demanded, her heart racing. "Engines are stable, but we need to get back to the Whisper's one word," Raj replied, glancing at the sensors. "I'm detecting multiple Voreth ships approaching our location." "Great," Alex muttered, her expression darkening. "We need to hurry." "Set a course back to the ship. Full speed," Ilara ordered, her focus sharpening. "We have the data, but we need to be ready for a fight." As Raj maneuvered the shuttle, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling of dread settling in her gut. The Vorath wouldn't take kindly to their incursion, and they would do everything in their power to retaliate. "Samira, what did you manage to download?" Ilara asked, turning to her first officer. "Essentially a mapping system and some operational data," Samira replied, her voice filled with urgency. "It includes coordinates for their supply lines and potential strategic targets." "Good. If we can analyze this, we can formulate a plan to disrupt their operations," Ilara said, her mind racing with possibilities. "Captain, incoming ships are in range," Raj warned, his voice tense. "They've locked onto us." "Brace for impact," Ilara shouted, her heart pounding as she prepared for the inevitable. The shuttle rocked violently as the Voreth ships opened fire. Energy blasts slammed into their shields, the ship shuddering under the force. "Shields holding at 70%, Raj reported, his eyes wide with concentration. "But they're coming in fast." "Return fire, target their lead ship," Ilara commanded, adrenaline coursing through her as she activated the shuttle's weapons. The shuttle shook again as Ilara fired back, laser beams streaking through the void and striking one of the approaching Voreth vessels. The ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, but others quickly filled the gap. "We need to get out of here," Alex shouted, gripping the edge of her seat. "They'll overwhelm us." "Raj, can you create a diversion?" Ilara asked, her mind racing. "Something to give us an opening to escape?" "I can try to overload the shuttle's secondary systems," Raj replied, his expression intense. "It might cause a temporary distraction." "Do it," Ilara commanded, her heart racing as they continued to engage the Voreth ships. Raj quickly initiated the sequence, his fingers flying over the controls. In 3, 2, 1. The shuttle erupted with a blinding flash of light as the secondary systems overloaded, creating a dazzling display. The Voreth ships hesitated for just a moment, giving Ilara the opening she needed. "Now, engage the thrusters," she shouted. Raj slammed the controls forward, and the shuttle surged ahead, breaking free from the chaos. They weaved through the debris field, narrowly avoiding energy blasts as they raced toward the safety of the Whisper's one word. "Captain, we're approaching the ship," Raj called out, relief flooding his voice. "Prepare for docking," Ilara instructed, her heart pounding as they drew closer. The familiar silhouette of the Whisper's one word loomed ahead, a beacon of safety amidst the turmoil. As the shuttle docked, Ilara felt a surge of relief. They had made it back, but the fight was far from over. The Vorath would not relent, and they had valuable data that could turn the tide of the conflict. "Get the data to the bridge," Ilara ordered as they disembarked. "We need to analyze it immediately." The crew sprang into action, Raj leading the way as they hurried back to the bridge. Ilara followed closely, her mind racing with the implications of their discovery. The atmosphere on the bridge of the Whisper's one word was electric, charged with a mixture of relief and tension as Ilara Voss took her position at the helm. The crew moved with urgency, each member aware of the gravity of their recent mission. The data retrieved from the derelict Voreth ship held the potential to change the course of the conflict, but they needed to act quickly. "Samira, bring up the data on the main display," Ilara commanded, her voice steady. "Right away, Captain," Samira replied, her fingers dancing over the controls. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a complex network of lines and points, each marked with the alien glyphs they had encountered. "Raj, what's our current status?" Ilara asked, glancing at the tactical displays. "Shields are holding at 80%, But we have multiple Vorath ships in pursuit, Raj reported, his brow furrowed in concentration. They'll be here in less than 5 minutes. Understood. Alex, can we set up a defensive perimeter? Ilara inquired, her mind racing. If they're coming for us, we need to be prepared. I'll start recalibrating the weapon systems, Alex said, her focus sharp. We'll need to be ready to fire as soon as they come within range. As Alex moved to her station, Ilara studied the data on the screen. The network of supply lines glowed ominously, and her heart raced at the implications. If they could intercept and disrupt these lines, they could cripple the Vorath war effort. Samira, what do we know about these supply points? Ilara asked, trying to make sense of the data. Based on the analysis, it looks like there are 3 primary supply routes, Samira explained, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the screen. We could target these points to cut off their resources. The first is a storage facility on Terran Roman 4, which is heavily fortified but holds a significant amount of materials. The second is a smaller outpost on the fringes of the sector, lightly defended but easier to infiltrate. The third is a major transport hub in the center of Vorath territory. Ilara considered their options, her mind racing. If we go for the storage facility, we'll need to be strategic about it. We can't afford a direct confrontation there, especially with their fleet closing in on us. Agreed, Samira said, her brow furrowing in thought. But if we hit the outpost first, we could gather more intel and potentially draw some of their forces away from the storage facility. Let's do that, Ilara decided, her resolve strengthening. We'll hit the outpost first and then reassess. Prepare for a jump to the coordinates of the outpost. Raj nodded, quickly inputting the coordinates. Jumping in 3, 2, 1. The ship shuddered as it transitioned into warp space, stars streaking by in a blur. Ilara felt the familiar thrill of the jump, but it was tinged with anxiety. The Vorath were relentless, and they wouldn't give up easily. As they exited warp, the view ahead transformed into the stark beauty of the outpost. It floated in the void, a cluster of metallic structures connected by walkways, surrounded by a smattering of smaller ships. Scan for enemy vessels, Ilara ordered, her gaze fixed on the outpost. We need to know what we're up against. Scanning now, Samira replied, her fingers flying over the console. I'm detecting a few small ships patrolling the area, but nothing substantial. It looks like they're not expecting an attack. Good. Let's take advantage of their complacency, Ilara said, a sense of determination settling over her. Raj, prepare to engage stealth mode. We'll approach quietly. Stealth systems are online, Raj confirmed, his voice steady. We should be able to get close without being detected. Alex, prepare the weapon systems for a quick strike, Ilara instructed. We'll need to be ready to disable any defenses they have once we get inside. On it, Alex said, her expression fierce. As they drew closer, Ilara's heart raced with anticipation. This was their chance to make a real impact, to strike a blow against the Vorath, and show them that they were not to be underestimated. Entering the perimeter, Raj announced, his eyes glued to the displays. We're undetected so far. Ilara felt a surge of hope. Let's keep it that way. Samira, can you access the facility's systems from here? I'll try to tap into their communications, Samira replied, her fingers flying over the controls. If I can get us inside their network, we might be able to shut down their defenses. Do it, Ilara urged. We'll need all the help we can get. As Samira worked, Ilara glanced at the main screen, where the outpost loomed closer. The structures were imposing, but they also bore the scars of past battles. This was a place that had seen conflict, and Ilara knew they had to exploit that weakness. Captain, I'm in, Samira exclaimed, her voice filled with excitement. I have access to their security systems. I can loop their cameras and disable some of their defenses. Perfect. Loop the cameras and disable any automated turrets, Ilara instructed. We'll go in hard and fast. Done, Samira said, her eyes gleaming. You're clear to approach. Raj, take us in, Alara commanded, her heart racing. Let's make this count. The ship moved smoothly toward the outpost, and Alara felt a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. They were on the brink of something significant, a mission that could alter the war's course. Dropping out of stealth, Raj announced, and the ship's exterior shimmered back to visibility as they entered the outpost docking bay. Prepare for boarding, Alara ordered, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Samira, keep monitoring the systems. If anything changes, let us know immediately. The docking clamps engaged, and the crew quickly donned their gear, weapons at the ready. Alara took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she led her team out of the ship and into the heart of the enemy's domain. The docking bay was eerily quiet, illuminated by the harsh white lights overhead. The metallic scent of the structure mingled with a faint hum of machinery, and Alara's instincts kicked in as she scanned the area for any signs of movement. "Stay sharp," she whispered, her voice low. "We don't know how many enemies are inside." As they moved deeper into the outpost, the corridors branched out in various directions, and Alara felt the tension in the air thicken. Every creak of metal and distant clank felt amplified, a reminder of the dangers lurking in the shadows. "Samira, can you give us a layout of the facility?" Alara asked, her eyes darting to the doorways they passed. "I'm working on it," Samira replied, her fingers flying over her device. "I've got access to some internal schematics, but it's limited." "Get us whatever you can," Alara urged. "We need to find the supply storage and any intel they have on their operations." They moved cautiously, staying close together as they navigated the narrow corridors. Alara could feel her heart racing with each step, anticipation and adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Captain, I've got a layout of the storage areas," Samira said, her voice steady. "There's a main supply room on the lower level, but it's heavily secured. We'll need to find a way to bypass the locks." "Let's find the nearest access point," Alara instructed. "We can't waste any time." As they continued down the corridor, Alara felt a surge of determination. This was their chance to strike a significant blow against the Vorath. They could disrupt their supply lines and gain valuable intel to use in future battles. Suddenly, an alarm blared throughout the facility, the red lights flashing ominously. "Damn it," Alex cursed. "They must have detected our presence." "Stay calm. We need to move quickly," Alara ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Raj, can you get us to the storage room?" "Working on it," Raj replied, his fingers flying over his device. "I'll try to reroute us through the maintenance tunnels." "Do it. Let's go," Alara urged, adrenaline flooding her veins. They rushed down the corridor, the sound of boots pounding against metal echoing in the chaos. Alara led the way, her instincts guiding her as they navigated the maze of corridors. "Almost there," Raj shouted, his voice filled with urgency. "Just a few more turns." As they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a group of Vorath soldiers, their weapons raised and ready. "Contact!" Alex shouted, her weapon firing instinctively. Alara reacted quickly, moving to the side as the area erupted into chaos. Energy blasts flew through the air, illuminating the dim corridors in flashes of light. "Keep moving," Alara shouted, returning fire as they ducked behind a nearby bulkhead. The Vorath soldiers were organized, returning fire with deadly precision. "Raj, can you secure that door?" Alara called out, her heart pounding as she fired back at their assailants. The chaos in the corridor intensified as Alara and her crew engaged the Vorath soldiers. The sharp staccato of energy blast rang in her ears, and she felt the adrenaline pumping through her veins. They needed to secure a path to the supply room, but with the Vorath soldiers blocking their way, every second counted. "Raj, how's that door coming?" Alara shouted over the din of battle, her weapon raised as she took aim at an approaching soldier. "I'm working on it," Raj replied, his voice strained as he focused on the door control panel. "Just a few more seconds." "Alex, cover him," Alara commanded, leaning out from behind the bulkhead to fire at the nearest Vorath soldier. The energy blast hit its mark, causing the enemy to stagger back. Alex moved forward, positioning herself strategically to shield Raj as he worked. "I've got your back. Just hurry." The Vorath soldiers were relentless, their weapons blazing with precision. Ilara felt a surge of frustration mixed with determination. They couldn't let the Vorath gain the upper hand here. Too much was at stake. "Samira, can you assist Raj with that door?" Ilara shouted, glancing back at her first officer. Samira was already on her device, tapping away furiously. "Almost there. I just need to bypass their security protocols," Samira replied, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "Make it quick," Ilara urged, firing again. The Vorath soldiers were starting to coordinate their movements, and she knew they couldn't hold off the assault for long. "Got it," Samira shouted suddenly. The door at the end of the corridor slid open with a hiss, revealing a darkened maintenance tunnel. "Go, it's clear." "Move, move, move," Ilara yelled, leading the charge as they sprinted toward the opening. Alex fired one last shot, hitting a Vorath soldier squarely in the chest before retreating into the tunnel behind Ilara. Raj followed closely, and Samira brought up the rear, glancing back at the advancing enemies. As they dashed into the tunnel, Ilara quickly assessed their surroundings. The air was cooler here, and the walls were lined with pipes and conduits, giving the space an industrial feel. It was dimly lit, but the emergency lights flickered enough to provide some visibility. "Raj, do you have a map of the maintenance tunnels?" Ilara asked, slowing her pace as they moved deeper into the darkness. "Yeah, let me pull it up," Raj replied, pulling out his device and navigating through the schematics. "It looks like we can get to the lower levels from here, but it'll take a few twists and turns." "Lead the way," Ilara instructed. "We need to find that supply room before they regroup." They followed Raj's lead, moving cautiously through the narrow tunnels. Every step felt charged with tension, and Ilara kept her weapon at the ready, scanning for any signs of movement. "Keep an eye out for any security measures," Samira said, her voice tense. "They might have surveillance systems or traps set up." "I'll take point," Ilara decided, pushing ahead of the group. "Just stay close and be ready for anything." As they wound their way through the maze like passages, Ilara felt her pulse quicken. The stakes were high, and they had a chance to strike a blow against the Vorath war machine. She couldn't let fear get in the way of their mission. "Captain, we're approaching a junction," Raj said, his voice focused. "The supply room should be down the left corridor." "Let's move," Ilara urged, gesturing for the team to follow. They took a left, entering a wider corridor that seemed to lead to a large storage area. As they walked, Ilara's instincts were on high alert. They had to be close. She could feel it in her bones. But the tension in the air was palpable, and she knew they had to remain vigilant. "Hold up," Ilara said, raising a hand. She heard something, a low hum that grew louder as they approached a large door at the end of the corridor. "Is that machinery?" Alex asked, squinting into the dim light. "It might be the supply room," Raj suggested, moving closer to the door's control panel. "I'll try to override the lock." "Be quick about it," Ilara replied, her heart racing as she listened for any sounds of approaching enemies. Raj knelt at the panel, his fingers flying over the controls. Come on," he muttered under his breath. The hum intensified, vibrating through the corridor as the door remained stubbornly closed. Ilara could feel the pressure building, the sense of urgency amplifying her determination. "Captain, I'm getting readings on my device," Samira said, her eyes widening. "The energy levels are spiking. This storage room is heavily secured, but if we can get in—" "Raj," Ilara urged, "we need to move." "Just a little longer," Raj insisted, sweat glistening on his brow as he worked. "I almost have it." Suddenly, the door panel emitted a series of beeps, and the door slid open with a hiss. Ilara's heart leapt, and she signaled for the team to move inside. The supply room was vast, filled with crates and containers stacked high, each marked with Vorath symbols. The low hum they had heard was coming from a series of machines along one wall processing materials for the war effort. Look at all this, Alex exclaimed, her eyes wide as she took in the sheer volume of supplies. We could disrupt their entire operation here. Focus, Ilara said, scanning the room for potential threats. We need to find intel and gather whatever we can carry. Samira moved to the nearest crate, prying it open. These are munitions, blasters, and energy cells. We could use these to our advantage. Raj, see if you can access their inventory systems, Ilara instructed. We need to know what else they have here. On it, Raj said, already moving to one of the terminals set up against the wall. He began typing furiously, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the screen. Meanwhile, Ilara moved deeper into the room, searching for any data drives or documents that could provide crucial intel. She rifled through crates, her heart racing as she uncovered more weapons and supplies. Captain, I'm getting a complete inventory, Raj called out, his voice rising above the low hum of the machines. They have enough supplies here to sustain a fleet for months. Ilara felt a surge of excitement. If we can take this out, it'll be a major setback for them. Let's gather as much as we can. As they worked quickly, Alex and Samira began loading energy cells and blasters into their packs. The sheer amount of resources was staggering, and Ilara felt a sense of purpose driving her. Captain, Raj shouted suddenly, his voice cutting through the rush of adrenaline. I'm detecting movement outside. They're sending reinforcements. Damn it, Ilara swore under her breath. We need to move, now. Almost done, Raj replied, his fingers flying over the terminal. I'm downloading intel on their supply routes and logistics. Samira, cover him, Ilara ordered, her instincts kicking into overdrive. Alex, help me with these crates. They worked in tandem, quickly shoving supplies into their packs. Ilara could feel the urgency pressing down on them, the knowledge that time was slipping away. Download complete, Raj exclaimed, disconnecting his device just as the door to the supply room shuddered under the force of an impact. Get ready, Ilara shouted, grabbing her weapon and positioning herself at the door. We're not letting them catch us here. The door exploded inward, and Vorath soldiers surged into the room, their weapons raised. Ilara fired immediately, her shots hitting one soldier squarely in the chest as chaos erupted around them. Fall back, Alex shouted, firing at the oncoming enemies as they retreated toward the entrance. Raj, move, Ilara commanded, her heart racing as she fought to hold the line. The Vorath soldiers were relentless, and they were outnumbered. I'm trying, Raj yelled, scrambling to grab his pack. Just give me a second. The Vorath soldiers advanced, energy blast illuminating the room in bursts of light. Ilara could feel the pressure mounting as they fought against the tide of enemies. Samira, get Raj out of here, Ilara shouted, her voice filled with urgency. We'll cover you. No, I won't leave you, Samira replied, her eyes fierce. We can't stay here, Ilara insisted, firing again at the advancing soldiers. You have to go. Get the intel back to the ship. Captain, Raj started, but Ilara cut him off. Go, now, she shouted, her heart pounding in her chest. Samira hesitated for a moment, then nodded, determination etched on her face. Fine, let's go, Raj. Ilara watched as they moved quickly toward the exit, her heart aching at the thought of leaving her team behind. But they needed the intel, and if they didn't escape now, it would all be for nothing. Cover them, Ilara commanded Alex as she continued to fire at the Vorath soldiers, her determination unwavering. The chaos in the supply room reached a fever pitch as Ilara held her ground, every ounce of her being focused on the task at hand. The Vorath soldiers poured in, and she could see the grim determination in their eyes. They were fighting not just for supplies, but for their very survival, and that made them dangerous. Samira, Raj, go, Ilara shouted again, her voice a force of will as she fired off another round, hitting a soldier and watching him crumple to the floor. The adrenaline coursing through her made her feel alive, but she knew they couldn't afford to stay and fight for long. Almost clear, Samira shouted, her eyes darting back toward Alara as she and Raj reached the door. "Cover us." "Stay low," Alara called, squeezing the trigger and releasing another blast that singed the air as it barely missed a soldier who ducked behind a crate. Alex moved beside Alara, her weapon blazing as she took aim at the nearest Vorath, her expression fierce. "We've got your back, Captain. Just hold the line." With a deep breath, Elora turned her focus back to the incoming soldiers. "Raj, can you lock that door behind you?" she yelled, trying to buy them just a little more time. "I can try," Raj replied, already fumbling with the terminal's emergency lock controls. "Now," Elora shouted as she saw Samira and Raj dive through the doorway. She aimed and fired again, striking another Vorath soldier. But the enemy was relentless, pushing forward with renewed vigor. Raj's fingers danced over the controls, and with a beep, the door slid shut just as Alara turned to face the remaining soldiers. "You did it!" she yelled, her heart racing. "Go, go, go!" Raj shouted back from the other side of the door, the urgency clear in his voice. Alara felt a surge of hope and fear mingling within her. They had to hold off the Vorath long enough for their escape to succeed. She turned back to Alex, who was still firing with precision. "We need to fall back, now." Alex nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I'll cover you, just give me a second." The sound of boots echoed in the corridor as more soldiers joined the fray, their voices shouting commands and rallying one another. Alara felt the pressure mounting as the reality of their situation sank in. "Alex," Alara urged, "we don't have time." With one last blast, Alex pivoted and sprinted toward the door, Alara right on her heels. They reached the exit just as the door behind them exploded open, and Alara felt the shockwave push her forward. "Move!" Alara yelled, pushing Alex ahead of her. They darted into the maintenance tunnel, the darkness swallowing them as they ran. The familiar hum of machinery faded into the background, replaced by the pounding of their hearts. "Where to now?" Alex gasped, glancing over her shoulder. "Follow me. We need to find a way back to the ship," Alara replied, her mind racing as she recalled the schematics Raj had shown her. There should be a maintenance hatch a few corridors down. As they sprinted through the twisting tunnels, Alara's senses heightened. The sounds of pursuit echoed behind them, and she could feel the weight of urgency bearing down on her. "Raj, Samira, you guys there?" Alara shouted, hoping for a response. "Here," Raj's voice came through, crackling with static. "We're at the docking bay. It's heavily guarded." "Damn it," Alara muttered under her breath. "We need to create a diversion. Can you access the systems to lock the guards out?" "I'll try," Raj replied, and Alara could hear the frantic typing on the other side. "Just give me a moment." "Make it fast," Alara urged, glancing back at Alex. "We can't wait much longer." The sounds of footsteps grew louder behind them, and Alara felt a shiver run down her spine. They were gaining on them. "This way," she called, leading Alex down another corridor, her heart pounding in her chest. They rounded a corner and found themselves in a dimly lit maintenance area filled with tools and parts. Alara paused, taking a moment to assess their surroundings. "We might be able to barricade ourselves in here," she suggested, glancing at Alex. "Do it," Alex replied, her voice steady. "We need a moment to catch our breath." Alara quickly moved to the nearest stack of crates, pushing them against the door just as the sounds of approaching soldiers echoed closer. She felt the adrenaline surging as she turned back to Alex, who was already scanning the area for anything useful. "Samira, how are you holding up?" Alara called out, hoping her first officer was still with Raj. "We're good, just trying to keep the guards distracted," Samira replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Keep it up," Alara urged, feeling a surge of pride in her team. "Raj, any luck on those locks?" "Almost there," Raj shouted back. "Just a few more adjustments." Alara glanced around the maintenance area, her mind racing. They needed to find a way to help Samira and Raj, but time was slipping away. "Alex, do you think we can rig something to delay the guards?" Alex nodded, her eyes lighting up with determination. If we can find some explosives or anything that can create a diversion, we might have a chance. Let's look, Ilara replied, quickly scanning the area. She spotted a box labeled explosives and made her way over, prying it open. Inside were several small devices, each marked with warning labels. Perfect, Ilara exclaimed, holding one up for Alex to see. We can use these to create a diversion. Great. We just need to set them up near the door, Alex said, already moving to help. Ilara quickly set to work, her heart racing as they rigged the explosives to detonate when triggered. This should buy us some time, she said, glancing at Alex. Now, let's get ready to move. Ready when you are, Alex replied, her gaze fixed on the door. Just as they finished, the door shook under the weight of approaching soldiers. Ilara felt her heart race again as she took a deep breath. On my mark, we'll trigger the explosives and make a run for it, she instructed, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Got it, Alex said, her eyes narrowed in focus. 3, 2, 1, Ilara counted down, and they both hit the activation switch for the explosives. The resulting explosion rocked the area, sending debris flying as the door burst open in a shower of sparks. Now, Ilara yelled, sprinting through the smoke and debris, Alex right behind her. The noise of the explosion masked their escape, and they dashed down the corridor, their hearts pounding with urgency. Ilara's mind raced as she recalled the layout Raj had shown her. They had to get to the docking bay and regroup with their team. Raj, Samira, where are you? Ilara shouted, her voice echoing through the dimly lit corridors. Still at the docking bay, Raj replied, breathless. We're almost ready, but it's getting hectic here. Just hold on, Ilara urged, pushing forward. They turned a corner, and the docking bay came into view, bustling with Vorath soldiers scrambling to respond to the chaos. Looks like we've got company, Alex said grimly, her weapon at the ready. Stay close, Ilara ordered, her heart pounding. We'll push through. They dashed into the docking bay, the sight of their ship Whispers, one word standing tall and proud amidst the chaos filled Ilara with renewed determination. But the Vorath soldiers were everywhere, and Ilara could see Raj and Samira, trapped behind a stack of crates. Over there, Ilara shouted, pointing toward her team. We have to get to them. They sprinted across the bay, dodging energy blasts as the Vorath soldiers attempted to take aim. Ilara felt the heat of the blasts whizzing past her, each near miss a reminder of how close they were to danger. Keep moving, Alex urged, firing back as they closed in on Raj and Samira. Ilara pushed forward, her heart racing as they finally reached the safety of the crates. We're here, she yelled, ducking behind cover. What's the plan? Just need a few more seconds to override the docking bay controls, Raj replied, his fingers dancing over the terminal. But it's locked down tight. Can you force it? Alex asked, her voice filled with urgency as she reloaded her weapon. I'll try, Raj exclaimed, sweat glistening on his brow. But we need to keep them busy. Let's create a distraction, Ilara suggested, her mind racing. Samira, can you access any external systems? We might be able to trigger the alarms elsewhere to draw their attention. On it, Samira replied, already pulling up her device. Alex, cover me, Ilara said, peeking around the crates to assess their surroundings. I'll help Raj with the controls. Got it, Alex said, moving to position herself at the front, ready to fire. The air in the docking bay was thick with tension as Ilara crouched beside Raj, her heart pounding as the sound of distant blaster fire echoed through the massive space. The Vorath soldiers were regrouping, and she knew they wouldn't have long before they launched another assault. Can you bypass the security protocols? Ilara asked, glancing at Raj, who was furiously typing on the terminal. I'm trying, Raj replied, his brow furrowed in concentration. But they've reinforced the locks. It's going to take a bit longer than I hoped. Make it quick. We don't have time, Ilara urged, peering around the crates at the chaotic scene unfolding. Alex had positioned herself strategically, her weapon trained on the entrance, ready to engage if any Vorath soldiers ventured too close. "Samira, how's that alarm?" Ilara called out, turning her attention to her first officer, who was focused on her device. "I'm setting it to trigger on a delay," Samira replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "Just a few more seconds, and it should draw their attention away from us." "Good. We need to keep them occupied while Raj gets that door open," Ilara said, her eyes darting back to the terminal. "Almost there," Raj exclaimed, sweat dripping from his brow. "If I can just bypass this last security layer." Just then, a hail of energy blasts rang out, striking the crates beside them and sending splinters flying. Alex fired back, her aim steady as she took out one of the Vorath soldiers who had peeked around the corner. "Watch your left," Alex shouted, taking aim again. Ilara clenched her jaw, adrenaline fueling her resolve. "Raj, focus. You've got this." "I'm almost," Raj started, but he was cut off by the sound of heavy boots approaching. The Vorath were closing in, their voices growing louder as they shouted orders. "Just a bit longer," Raj shouted, his fingers moving rapidly over the terminal. "Got it. The override is in." The docking bay suddenly lit up with alarms, and the sounds of sirens echoed through the massive space. The Vorath soldiers hesitated, their attention split as they turned toward the source of the alarm blaring from the far side of the bay. "Now, Samira," Ilara shouted. Samira pressed the final command, and the alarms intensified, blaring a deafening warning. Ilara took advantage of the distraction. "Alex, let's move," she yelled, sprinting toward Raj and Samira. "Covering you," Alex replied, firing at the Vorath soldiers as they began to regroup, some rushing to investigate the source of the alarm. Ilara reached Raj and Samira, her heart racing. "Get ready to head for the ship," she commanded. "Once the door opens, we go." "On my mark," Raj said, tapping furiously at the terminal. Just a few more seconds to disable their locks. The Vorath soldiers, realizing the alarms were a diversion, began to focus back on Ilara's team. One soldier took aim and fired, narrowly missing Ilara as she ducked behind the crates. "Raj, hurry," Ilara urged, glancing at the enemy soldiers now closing in. "We need to get out of here." "I'm doing my best," Raj shouted, frustration etched across his face as he continued to work the terminal. Just a few more seconds. Ilara could feel the weight of time pressing down on her. "Alex, hold them off," she shouted, taking her place at the front. "We can't let them get close." Alex fired again, her expression fierce as she covered their retreat. "I won't let them through," she yelled, the fire in her eyes unwavering. "Almost there," Raj shouted again, his fingers flying over the screen. Just a few more seconds. Ilara kept her focus sharp, scanning for any signs of movement as the Vorath soldiers edged closer. "We need to buy Raj time," she yelled. "Fall back if you have to." "Got it," Alex replied, firing another round, but they were beginning to get flanked. "I'll cover the right." Samira was already moving, grabbing a crate and dragging it to the side to create a makeshift barrier. "We can't let them surround us," she said, her voice filled with urgency. Just then, the terminal let out a series of beeps, and Raj's face broke into a grin. "Got it! The locks are down," he exclaimed, and with a push of a button, the large doors to their ship slid open with a hiss. "Go, now!" Ilara shouted, motioning for everyone to move. "Alex, we need to cover our retreat." "Let's go," Alex shouted back, moving to fall in line with Ilara and Samira as they sprinted toward the ship, the sounds of chaos trailing behind them. Ilara could hear the shouts of the Vorath soldiers behind them, but she didn't dare look back. They dashed into the ship's hangar, and Ilara felt a rush of relief as the familiar hum of the engines greeted them. "Get to the cockpit," Ilara commanded, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Raj, you know what to do." "On it," Raj said, his determination evident as he hurried to his station. Alex and Samira rushed to the back of the ship, preparing for launch as Ilara took her place in the cockpit, her fingers flying over the controls. The ship responded beneath her, and she felt a surge of confidence. "Get ready," she called out, her heart racing as the engines began to warm up. "We're about to take off." Just then, a loud crash reverberated through the ship as Vorath soldiers poured into the hangar. Alara's heart sank, but she steeled herself, determination igniting within her. "Alex, Samira, we have company," she yelled, turning to grab her weapon, ready to defend their position. "Stay back," Alex shouted, taking aim at the doorway. "We'll hold them off." Ilara fired at the approaching soldiers, her breath steady as she focused on the task at hand. They couldn't let the Vorath board their ship. Failure was not an option. "Raj, how long until we're ready to launch?" Ilara called, firing again as the soldiers closed in. "Just a few more seconds," Raj shouted, his voice strained as he worked the controls. "Make it happen," Ilara urged, glancing at the screen displaying their launch sequence. The countdown timer was ticking, and they needed every second. As the Vorath soldiers pushed forward, Ilara could feel the intensity of the moment. She fired again, striking a soldier and watching him fall. But more were rushing in, their eyes filled with determination. "Samira, can you disable their weapons?" Ilara called out, her mind racing. "Anything to buy us time." "I'll try," Samira replied, her fingers moving swiftly over her device as she focused on the external systems. "Just keep them busy." Ilara nodded, her heart pounding as she continued to fire, every shot a desperate plea for survival. The Vorath soldiers were relentless, and she knew they couldn't hold them off forever. Come on," Raj urged, his fingers flying over the controls. Just a few more seconds. With a sudden surge of energy, Ilara focused all her strength into the moment. "Alex, we need to push them back," she shouted, firing again. "We can't let them breach the cockpit," Alex yelled, her weapon steady as she took down another soldier. The sounds of battle filled the air, and Ilara could feel the tension crackling around them. She could see Raj's frantic movements, his determination palpable as he worked against the clock. "Just a little longer," Raj shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "Samira, how's it going?" Ilara asked, her heart racing as she ducked behind the controls, firing at the advancing soldiers. "Almost there," Samira called, her focus unwavering as she continued to work the systems. "Now," Ilara yelled, and they pushed forward, covering each other as they fought against the tide of soldiers. Ilara took a deep breath, her heart pounding as she focused on the battle. They couldn't afford to lose now, not when they were so close to escape. "Raj, how are we looking?" Ilara shouted, her eyes narrowing as she watched the Vorath soldiers closing in. "We're ready," Raj yelled, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Just need to get clearance." "Let's go," Ilara shouted, and with one final push, she and Alex forced back the last of the soldiers, their determination unwavering. "Now, launch sequence," Raj shouted, his fingers flying over the controls. The ship trembled as the engines roared to life, and Ilara felt the familiar rush of adrenaline as they prepared for takeoff. "Everyone, strap in," she called, her voice filled with urgency. The ship lifted off the ground, the force of the engines pushing them back into their seats as Ilara maneuvered them into the sky. She felt the weight of the battle slip away, replaced by a sense of exhilaration. "Hold on," Ilara shouted, guiding the ship through the chaos of the hangar, dodging energy blasts as the Vorath scrambled to regain control. "Go, go, go," Alex yelled, her voice filled with adrenaline. As the ship surged into the atmosphere, Ilara felt the familiar jolt of freedom mixed with the bittersweet taste of survival. The Whisper's one word responded beautifully to her commands, the engines roaring as they broke through the last layers of atmosphere and into the vastness of space. "Raj, status report," Ilara called, her heart racing as she glanced at the control panel, its lights flickering with information. "Shield systems are coming online," Raj replied, his fingers flying over the controls. "Weapons are operational, but we need to check for any damage from that last firefight." "Keep an eye on our surroundings," Ilara said, her eyes scanning the dark expanse of space through the cockpit's viewport. We don't know if the Vorath followed us. Got it, Raj said, focused and determined. Samira, still catching her breath, turned to Alex. Did we get everyone? I thought I saw more soldiers in the hangar. Alex nodded, her expression serious. We lost a few precious seconds, but everyone made it. We'll regroup and assess our next move. Let's head for the nearest outpost, Ilara suggested, her mind racing. We need to patch ourselves up and strategize our next steps. Raj tapped at the navigation system, pulling up a star map. There's a small supply outpost about 10 clicks from here. It should be off the Vorath's radar. Perfect, Ilara said, feeling a flicker of hope as they charted a course. Let's get there quickly and find a way to regroup. We need to replenish our supplies and figure out our next move. As the ship glided through the darkness of space, Ilara allowed herself a moment to breathe. The adrenaline of the escape was still coursing through her, but she knew they couldn't let their guard down just yet. Samira, can you check in with the others? Ilara asked, looking back at her first officer. Make sure everyone's accounted for. Of course, Samira replied, her expression steady as she activated her communication device. I'll get an update. Ilara turned back to the controls, her thoughts racing as she calculated their next steps. They were safe for now, but the Vorath wouldn't rest. They would want vengeance after the chaos they'd caused in the supply room. Alex, how are you holding up? Ilara asked, noticing the tension still etched across her friend's face. I'm good, Alex said, though her voice carried the weight of the battle. Just a bit rattled. I didn't expect the Vorath to hit so hard. Ilara nodded, understanding the unspoken fear that lingered in the air. We've been through a lot, but we'll get through this, too. The ship hummed around them, a reassuring presence in the face of uncertainty. As they traveled further into the void, Ilara felt a sense of purpose settle over her. They would regroup, recover, and figure out how to strike back. Raj, how long until we reach the outpost? Ilara asked, her eyes focused on the navigation screen. About 20 minutes if we maintain this speed, Raj replied, his tone calm and collected. Good. Let's use that time to prepare, Ilara said, her gaze shifting to the back of the ship. We need to make sure everyone is ready for what comes next. As they cruised through space, Ilara felt a renewed sense of determination. The Vorath had pushed them to their limits, but they were still standing. They had survived, and now it was time to turn the tide. 20 minutes later, the small outpost appeared on the ship's sensors, a speck of life in the otherwise desolate expanse. Ilara maneuvered the ship closer, taking in the sight of the station. It was a basic supply hub, but it would provide the essentials they needed. Prepare for landing, Ilara called, her heart steadying as she navigated the landing sequence. Engaging landing gear, Raj said, his fingers moving deftly over the controls. The ship touched down with a gentle thud, the engines humming to a quiet lull. Alex, Samira, let's get a lay of the land, Ilara said, feeling the familiar pulse of leadership within her. Raj, stay with the ship. We'll be back shortly. Be careful, Raj replied, his eyes serious. I'll keep the systems running and stay alert. Ilara nodded, sharing a brief look with her crew before stepping out of the ship. The air was cool and filled with the faint scent of metal and machinery. They emerged onto the platform, taking in the sight of the outpost, which was buzzing with activity. Stay close, Ilara instructed, scanning the area for any signs of trouble. Let's see what we can find. As they moved through the outpost, Ilara felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. They needed to gather supplies and information, and she wouldn't let her team down. The interior of the outpost was a stark contrast to the ship's cozy warmth. Metal walls lined the narrow corridors, and the air was filled with the sounds of machinery humming and people talking. Ilara spotted a supply station and headed over, her crew close behind. Greetings. How can I assist you? A technician asked, glancing up from his station as they approached. We're in need of supplies, Ilara said, her voice steady. Food, medical supplies, anything you can spare. The technician nodded, moving swiftly to pull up a list on a nearby terminal. I can get you food packs and medical kits. How many do you need? Alara exchanged a glance with Samira. We'll need at least 3 medical kits and as much food as you can spare. Got it. I'll prepare them for you, the technician said, moving quickly to gather the supplies. Thank you, Alara replied, grateful for the quick response. As they waited, Alex leaned closer to Alara. What's our plan from here? Do we have any intel on the Vorath's movements? I'm hoping we can gather some information while we're here, Alara said, her mind racing. If we can find out where they're deploying forces, we might be able to make a strategic move. Let's keep our ears open, Samira said, glancing around. There's bound to be chatter in a place like this. Alara nodded, her instincts sharp as she surveyed the area. After a few moments, the technician returned with a cart filled with supplies. Here you go, 3 medical kits and several food packs, he said, wheeling the cart over. Thank you, Alara said, her gratitude genuine. This will help us tremendously. No problem, just doing my job, the technician replied with a smile. As they loaded the supplies onto the ship, Alara felt a growing sense of urgency. They needed to gather as much information as they could before the Vorath caught wind of their location. Let's split up and see what we can find, Alara suggested as they finished loading the supplies. Alex, you and I will check the main control room. Samira, see if you can find any locals to talk to. Got it, Samira replied, determination in her eyes. I'll see what I can dig up. Let's meet back here in an hour, Alara said, her voice steady. We'll regroup and figure out our next move. As they separated, Alara felt the familiar rush of purpose filling her. She and Alex made their way to the control room, their footsteps echoing in the metallic halls. The control room was bustling with activity as technicians monitored various screens and data streams. Alara approached the main terminal, her eyes scanning the displays for any sign of Vorath activity. Let's see what we can find, Alara said, tapping the terminal to pull up information. Alex stood close, her gaze focused on the screens. Any signs of the Vorath? She asked, her voice low. Alara's heart raced as she began sifting through the data. There have been increased patrols near the outer sectors, but nothing specific, she replied, frustration creeping in. It looks like they're still searching for us, but they haven't narrowed down our location. Good, Alex said, her expression thoughtful. That gives us some time to regroup. Alara nodded, her focus still on the terminal. She pulled up a map of the sector, marking the Vorath patrol routes. If we can identify the gaps in their patrols, we might find a way to slip past them. Just then, a technician approached them, his face serious. I overheard some chatter about a Vorath convoy scheduled to move through this sector soon, he said, his voice low. If you're planning to make a move, you should be careful. Thank you for the information, Alara replied, her mind racing. Do you know when they'll be passing through? Within the next few hours, the technician replied. They're heavily armed, so if you're thinking of making a play, you'll need a solid plan. We appreciate the heads up, Alex said, her expression resolute. We'll be sure to be ready. After the technician walked away, Alara turned to Alex, her thoughts racing. We need to inform Samira. If we can set up an ambush, we might be able to take out a significant number of their forces. Alara felt the pulse of urgency in her veins as she and Alex retraced their steps through the bustling outpost. They weaved through narrow corridors and past busy technicians, the weight of their new intel pressing heavily on her mind. As they approached the supply area where they had last left Samira, Alara could already see her first officer animatedly discussing something with a group of locals. Samira's presence radiated authority, and Alara felt a surge of pride at how far their team had come. They had become a unit, each person playing a vital role in their fight for survival. Samira, Alara called out, raising her hand to get her attention. Samira turned, her expression brightening as she spotted them. Alara, Alex, you won't believe what I just found out, she said, motioning for them to come closer. The locals nearby nodded in acknowledgement, their expressions curious. "What did you learn?" Alex asked, eager to hear. "There's a convoy of Vorath troops scheduled to pass through this sector in just a few hours," Samira explained, her voice steady and controlled. "If we act fast, we might be able to set up an ambush." Elara exchanged a glance with Alex, their shared understanding igniting a flicker of excitement. "That's exactly what we were hoping to hear," Elara said, nodding. "We have a solid lead on their patrol routes and a plan forming." "Then let's make it happen," Samira replied, her resolve evident. Elara turned to the group of locals, their eyes wide with anticipation. "We need your help. If you know the terrain around here, we could use your knowledge to set up an effective ambush." One of the locals, a wiry man with a keen gaze, stepped forward. "I know these grounds well. There are several choke points along the route the Vorath are taking. We can set up barriers and use the natural cover to our advantage." "Excellent," Elara said, feeling a rush of confidence. "We'll need to coordinate quickly. We don't have much time." The local nodded. "We can gather supplies and set up traps to slow them down. But we'll need your team to handle the actual confrontation." "Count on us," Alex said, her determination unwavering. "We'll draw them in and make sure they don't get away." "Let's split into teams," Elara suggested, her mind racing with possibilities. "Samira, you coordinate with the locals. Gather the materials we need for barriers and traps. Alex and I will head back to the ship and prepare our weapons and defenses." "Understood," Samira replied, her expression serious. "I'll ensure we're ready to go when you return." As they broke away, Elara felt the thrill of the plan coursing through her. This was their chance to strike back, to turn the tables on the Vorath. She and Alex hurried to the ship, their minds buzzing with strategy. Inside the Whisper's one word, Elara wasted no time. She began checking their weapons inventory while Alex prepared the defensive systems. The ship had seen its share of battles, and Elara was determined to make sure they were ready for whatever the Vorath threw at them. "Are we set for the ambush?" Alex asked, her voice steady as she loaded ammunition into her weapon. "Almost," Elara replied, her focus sharp as she double-checked the energy cells. "We'll need to ensure we have enough firepower to deal with their troops." As Elara finished her checks, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. They had faced adversity before, but this time they had the upper hand. "We're going to catch them off guard," she said, her voice filled with conviction. Alex nodded, her expression serious. "We need to make sure our plan is foolproof. The Vorath are unpredictable." "I know," Elara replied, her mind racing through the possible scenarios. "But we've worked hard to get here. We just need to stick to the plan and trust each other." After a few more moments of preparation, they stepped back outside, the cool air hitting their faces as they made their way toward the rendezvous point with Samira and the locals. Elara could feel the anticipation building around them. As they arrived, she saw Samira and the locals moving with purpose. Materials were being gathered: branches, crates, and anything that could serve as a barrier. Elara could see the determination in their eyes, and it fueled her own resolve. "Looks like you're making good progress," Elara said, her voice steady as she approached. "Just about done," Samira replied, her expression bright. "We've set up a series of barriers along the route. With some traps hidden among them, we should be able to slow them down significantly." "Perfect," Elara said, her heart racing at the prospect of their plan coming together. "How much time do we have until the convoy arrives?" "About an hour," Samira said. "We'll need to be in position well before then." "Let's get into place," Alex said, her eyes narrowing with focus. "We can't let them slip by us." As they moved into the designated positions, Elara could feel the tension building. The plan was set, but she knew that the unexpected was always a possibility. The Vorath had proven to be resourceful and resilient in their pursuit, and she couldn't afford to underestimate them. They took their positions, hidden behind the cover of trees and debris, the makeshift barriers camouflaged against the landscape. Elara crouched low, her pulse quickening as she listened intently for any signs of movement. Stay alert, she whispered to Alex, who was stationed beside her. We need to be ready to move. Alex nodded, her eyes scanning the area. I can't shake the feeling that they might be onto us. Just keep an eye out, Ilara replied, her voice steady. We've got this. As the minutes passed, Ilara's mind raced with thoughts of their past encounters with the Vorath. Each battle had been a test of their strength, their will to survive. This time, they were the hunters, not the hunted. Suddenly, a distant rumble caught her attention. Ilara's heart raced as she peered through the foliage, straining to see what was approaching. There they are, she hissed, her pulse quickening. Through the trees, she spotted the convoy, several armored vehicles moving steadily along the dirt road. Her breath caught in her throat as she took in the sight, the realization that they were moments away from engaging the enemy sinking in. Ready? Alex asked, her weapon poised and ready. Ilara nodded, adrenaline surging through her. On my mark, we spring the trap. The convoy drew closer, the rumble of engines growing louder. Ilara could see the Vorath soldiers scanning the area, their expressions tense as they remained alert. Now, Ilara shouted, springing into action. With a loud crash, they triggered the first set of barriers, sending debris flying into the air. The Vorath soldiers jumped in surprise, their eyes widening as they realized they were under attack. Open fire, Ilara yelled, her voice ringing with authority. She fired her weapon, the energy blasts lighting up the area as chaos erupted. Alex followed suit, her aim steady as she took down a soldier scrambling for cover. The Vorath soldiers returned fire, but the barriers gave Ilara and her team the advantage they needed. Samira coordinated the locals, who began launching makeshift projectiles to further disrupt the Vorath. Stay focused, Ilara shouted, her heart racing as she continued to fire. We can't let them regroup. The battle was fierce, and Ilara could see the Vorath struggling to gain their footing. They had been caught off guard, and Ilara was determined to keep the momentum on their side. As they fought, Ilara felt the rush of adrenaline fueling her movements. Every shot fired, every soldier taken down, was a step toward reclaiming their freedom. Move to the left flank, Alex yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. We need to flank them. Ilara nodded, her focus sharp as they repositioned themselves. They needed to keep the pressure on, to prevent the Vorath from regrouping. Suddenly, a blast of energy whizzed past Ilara's head, and she ducked instinctively. Watch it, she shouted, returning fire at the source. Stay low, Samira called out, her eyes focused on the enemy lines. We've got to keep them pinned. As the battle raged on, Ilara could feel the tide shifting in their favor. The Vorath were scrambling, their formations breaking as Ilara and her team pressed forward. Push them back, Ilara shouted, her voice filled with determination. We can't let them escape. With renewed vigor, they pressed the attack, their movements coordinated and fluid. Ilara felt the exhilaration of battle, the sense of purpose igniting a fire within her. The Vorath soldiers began to fall back, their confidence shaken by the unexpected ambush. Ilara could see their leader shouting orders, trying to regain control, but it was too late. Now's our chance, Alex yelled, charging forward. Let's finish this. With a final push, Ilara and her team surged ahead, their weapons firing as they closed in on the remaining Vorath. The sounds of battle echoed in the air, but Ilara could feel the momentum swinging in their favor. The cacophony of battle reverberated in Ilara's ears as she charged forward, adrenaline surging through her. The Vorath soldiers, once a formidable force, were faltering. Their formations had splintered, and confusion rippled through their ranks as Ilara and her team pressed the advantage. Focus fire on the left, Ilara shouted, pointing at a group of Vorath trying to regroup. Alex and Samira responded immediately, their weapons trained on the target, and together they unleashed a barrage of energy blasts. The Vorath soldiers scattered, their attempts to regain their footing met with relentless fire. Ilara could see their leader, a tall figure clad in armor, frantically signaling for retreat. The sight ignited a fierce determination within her. We can't let them escape, she yelled, the urgency in her voice palpable. Press forward. They pushed through the debris-strewn landscape, moving as one cohesive unit. The locals, emboldened by their success, joined the fray, launching whatever makeshift projectiles they could find. The sound of metal clanging against armor rang out as they fought side by side. Ilara felt a surge of pride for her team and the locals who had rallied behind them. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a stand against oppression. The Vorath had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. "Keep the pressure on," Samira called out, her voice steady as she fired at an enemy soldier. "We've got them on the ropes." Ilara's heart raced as they surged toward the enemy's flank, cutting off their escape route. She could see fear flickering in the eyes of the Vorath soldiers, and it fueled her resolve. They had fought too hard to back down now. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupted nearby, throwing Ilara off balance. She stumbled but quickly regained her footing, scanning the area for the source. Smoke billowed, obscuring her vision, but she could hear the chaos unfolding around her. "Alex, Samira," she shouted, her voice cutting through the haze. "Status report." "We're good," Samira replied, her tone unyielding. "Just keep pushing forward." Ilara nodded, her determination hardening. She could see the Vorath leader attempting to rally his troops, shouting orders that fell on deaf ears. They were disorganized, panicked, and it was time to exploit that weakness. "Let's take out their leader," Ilara shouted, locking eyes with Alex. "If we can disrupt their command structure, we might turn this into a rout." "On it," Alex replied, her expression fierce. They moved in tandem, weaving through the chaos as they closed in on the Vorath leader. As they approached, Ilara could see the armored figure's face, a mix of rage and fear etched across it. The Vorath leader brandished a weapon, aiming it in their direction, but Ilara was faster. "Get down," she yelled, dropping into a low crouch as energy blasts erupted around them. Alex responded, firing back with precision, forcing the leader to retreat. "Cover me," Ilara shouted, her heart pounding as she surged forward, weaving through the scattered debris and enemy fire. She could see the Vorath soldiers beginning to fall back, their resolve crumbling. "Push," Alex yelled, joining her side as they advanced. "Don't let them breathe." They moved with purpose, closing the distance between them and the Vorath leader. Ilara could feel the weight of the moment bearing down on her. This was more than just a battle. It was a chance to reclaim their power, to show the Vorath that they would not be easily subdued. As they neared, the Vorath leader swung his weapon wildly, desperation spilling from him as he fought to maintain control. But Ilara was ready. She dodged to the side, aiming carefully before unleashing a blast of energy that struck the leader square in the chest. He staggered backward, his weapon clattering to the ground as he struggled to regain his footing. Ilara took a breath, the victory feeling almost surreal. They had the advantage now, and she would not let it slip away. "Finish him," Samira shouted, her voice ringing out amidst the chaos. Ilara nodded, her heart pounding as she closed the distance. But before she could react, the Vorath leader drew a hidden sidearm, a sleek weapon gleaming in the smoky air. Time slowed as Ilara's instincts kicked in. She raised her weapon, but he was quicker. "Look out!" Alex shouted, diving toward Ilara. In that split second, chaos erupted. A blast of energy surged through the air, but instead of Ilara, it struck Alex, sending her crashing to the ground. "No!" Ilara screamed, her heart racing as she rushed to Alex's side. Panic surged through her as she knelt beside her friend, feeling the heat of the moment closing in. "Stay with me," Ilara shouted, desperation lacing her voice. She could see Alex struggling to breathe, her expression pained. "I'm okay," Alex gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Just keep fighting." "Samira, we need help," Ilara shouted, her heart aching as she tried to keep Alex alert. "Stay with me, Alex. You're going to be fine." "Get him," Alex urged, her eyes flickering. "He can't get away." Ilara's heart twisted at the thought of losing Alex, but she couldn't let her emotions cloud her judgment. She looked up, her gaze locking onto the Vorath leader, who was still reeling from the blast. Fueled by a mix of rage and determination, Elara pushed herself to her feet, the weight of the moment propelling her forward. "You won't get away," she shouted, her voice carrying across the battlefield. With renewed purpose, she charged at the Vorath leader, her weapon raised. He was disoriented, but he wasn't finished yet. He regained his composure and aimed at her. But Elara was faster. She fired, the energy blast hitting him squarely in the chest. He staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief as he fell to the ground. "Is he down?" Samira shouted from behind her. "Yes," Elara called back, her heart racing with victory. But there was no time to celebrate. She turned back to Alex, panic rising again as she rushed to her friend's side. "Alex," Elara cried, kneeling beside her. "Stay with me, please." "I'm fine," Alex insisted, but her voice was weak. "Just need to breathe." "Help is coming," Elara shouted, glancing around for Samira and the locals. They were still engaged in the fight, but the Vorath were retreating now, their leader defeated. "We need a medic." "Here," Samira shouted, running over with a local medic. The medic knelt beside Alex, his expression serious as he assessed the situation. "Hold on," he said, quickly moving to stabilize Alex's injuries. Elara felt a rush of relief, but the worry still gnawed at her. "Stay with us, Alex," Elara said, her voice trembling. "You're going to be okay." Alex managed a faint smile, her eyes flickering with determination. "I'm not going anywhere. Just need a moment." The medic worked quickly, stabilizing Alex and applying bandages to her wounds. Elara remained by her side, fear and hope warring within her as she kept a close watch on her friend. "Looks like they're retreating," Samira said, her voice steady as she surveyed the battlefield. The Vorath soldiers were pulling back, their once organized ranks now a disarray of chaos. "They're losing their hold on this sector," Alex murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "We did it, together." "Yes, we did," Elara said, pride swelling in her chest. "But we need to regroup and assess the damage. We can't celebrate just yet." As the battle subsided, Elara turned her attention to the locals, who had fought valiantly alongside them. Many wore expressions of triumph, but others were still reeling from the chaos. "Everyone, gather around," Elara called, her voice cutting through the lingering tension. "We need to assess our next steps and ensure we're ready for any retaliation from the Vorath." The locals began to form a circle, their eyes filled with a mix of hope and determination. Samira stood beside Elara, her gaze unwavering. "We fought well today," Samira said, her voice steady. "But this victory is just the beginning. The Vorath will not let this stand." Elara nodded, her thoughts racing. "We need to secure our position here and fortify against any possible counterattacks. If they decide to strike back, we need to be prepared." "Agreed," Samira replied, her expression resolute. "We can't let our guard down. We've gained ground, but we need to maintain it." As they discussed their next moves, Elara felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Together, they would continue to fight, to reclaim their freedom and protect those who stood by their side. "Let's get to work," Elara said, determination echoing in her voice. "We'll build on this victory, and we'll show the Vorath that they've underestimated us." The aftermath of the battle hung in the air like a thick fog, the remnants of chaos scattered across the makeshift battlefield. Elara stood at the center of the gathering, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of combat. The locals, now emboldened by their small victory, buzzed with energy and determination. They were ready to fortify their position and prepare for whatever the Vorath might throw at them next. "First things first," Elara said, raising her voice to draw attention. "We need to assess our resources. Samira, can you organize a team to inventory weapons and supplies?" "Absolutely," Samira replied, her gaze sharp. "I'll gather the locals to help. They know what we have and what we need." "Good. Alex, how are you feeling?" Elara asked, turning to her friend, who was still seated on the ground, surrounded by the medic and some concerned locals. "I'm okay," Alex said, her voice steady despite the pain etched on her face. "Just a bit sore. I'll be back on my feet soon." Alara squeezed Alex's hand, her worry evident. "You pushed yourself today. Just take it easy for now." "I'll rest when this is all over," Alex replied, a glint of determination in her eyes. "What's next?" "We're going to need to set up defenses," Alara said, looking around at the gathered group. "We've seen how quickly the Vorath can strike. We can't let them catch us off guard again. We need to reinforce our perimeter and establish watchpoints." The locals nodded, some exchanging glances. A tall woman with dark hair stepped forward. "We have some experience with this kind of work," she said, her voice steady. "We can help build fortifications." Alara smiled, feeling a sense of camaraderie. "Thank you. Every hand helps. Let's start by reinforcing the area where we took the ambush. We can use the debris and materials we have." As the group began to disperse, Alara turned to Samira. "I want you to lead the construction efforts. Make sure we set up barriers that can withstand an assault. We can't be complacent." "Understood," Samira said, her eyes fierce with resolve. "I'll get the locals organized and start building." Alara glanced back at Alex, who was still being tended to, but had a determined look on her face. "You're not going to sit this one out, are you?" Alex smirked, though it was strained. "You know me better than that. I'll oversee the defenses from here. Just point me to the schematics, and I can help coordinate." "Perfect. Just take it easy," Alara cautioned, before moving to join the locals who were gathering supplies. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the landscape, Alara surveyed the progress they had made. Makeshift barriers lined the perimeter, crafted from debris, logs, and anything else they could scrounge together. The locals worked with a shared sense of purpose, their determination palpable in the air. "Looks good," Samira said, joining Alara as they surveyed their handiwork. "We've got a solid defensive line, and with the traps set, we should have a chance to hold them off if they come back." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Alara replied, though she knew better than to underestimate their enemy. "But we can't be caught unprepared again." They turned their attention back to the gathering locals, who were sharing stories of the battle and planning their next moves. Alara felt a swell of pride in her chest. They had become a community, bonded by their shared struggle against the Vorath. "Do you think they'll retaliate soon?" Samira asked, her brow furrowed. "I wouldn't be surprised," Alara admitted. "We've taken out their leader. They won't take that lightly. We need to be ready for anything." As night fell, they lit fires to keep the darkness at bay, creating a sense of warmth amidst the uncertainty. Alara joined the locals around the fire, listening to their stories and sharing her own experiences. Each tale strengthened their bond, reinforcing the spirit of unity they needed to face the challenges ahead. "Tomorrow, we should send out scouts to gather more information about the Vorath movements," Alara suggested, her voice steady against the crackling flames. "We can't rely on just what we've seen. We need to know what they're planning." A local man, tall and broad-shouldered, nodded. "I'll volunteer to scout. I know the area well. I can get close without being detected." "Thank you," Alara said, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over her. "We'll need to be careful. The Vorath will be on high alert, and we can't risk losing anyone." As the fire crackled and the stars twinkled above, Alara felt a flicker of hope. They were stronger together, and for the first time in a long time, she believed they could change the tide of this conflict. The next morning dawned with a sense of urgency. Alara was up early, pacing as she reviewed the plans for the day. Alex had insisted on being involved, despite her injuries, and was busy coordinating with the locals to finalize their defenses. "Are you sure you're up for this?" Alara asked, concern creeping into her voice as she approached Alex, who was directing a group of locals with hand gestures. "I'll be fine," Alex insisted, her determination unwavering. "Just keep me in the loop, okay?" "Always," Alara replied, a small smile breaking through her worry. "Let's focus on gathering intel first. Once we know what we're up against, we can plan our next move. The local scout who had volunteered to survey the area was preparing to leave, gathering a few supplies before setting off. Alara made sure he had everything he needed, her instincts telling her how crucial this mission would be. "Be careful out there," she said, her voice firm. "Keep low and stick to the shadows. If you see any Vorath, don't engage, just gather information and return as quickly as you can." "I will," he promised, determination in his eyes. "I'll be back before you know it." As he set off, Alara felt a mix of anxiety and hope. They needed to know what the Vorath were planning, and this scout could provide valuable information. Throughout the day, Alara and Samira coordinated efforts to reinforce their defenses. The locals worked tirelessly, constructing barriers and setting up traps, while Alex oversaw the operations, offering suggestions and helping organize the supplies. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the makeshift camp, the scout finally returned, breathless but unharmed. "What did you find?" Alara asked, her heart pounding as she gathered everyone around. "The Vorath are regrouping," the scout said, his expression serious. "I saw them moving in from the south, gathering reinforcements. They're planning to hit us hard within the next few days." Alara exchanged a worried glance with Samira. "How many troops did you see?" "Hard to say, but at least 24, possibly more. They're loading supplies into their vehicles, and I overheard them talking about a counterattack." "Damn it," Samira muttered, her frustration evident. "We need to be ready for them. We can't let them catch us off guard." "Exactly," Alara said, her mind racing. "We need to formulate a plan to defend ourselves, but we can also use this opportunity to strike back if we can get a solid count on their forces." Alex nodded, a glint of determination in her eyes. "We should set up a decoy. If they're moving troops, we can draw them into a trap before they reach our main defenses." "That's a bold move," Samira cautioned, but Alara could see the spark of agreement in her eyes. "But it might just work." Alara stepped forward, feeling the weight of leadership settle on her shoulders. "Let's do it. We can set up a distraction to draw their forces away from our defenses. It could give us the advantage we need." They began to discuss their plan, detailing how they could use the terrain to their advantage. The locals listened intently, offering their insights and suggestions. Alara felt a sense of unity as they worked together, each person contributing to the greater good. As the night deepened, they finalized their strategy, setting their defenses while preparing the decoy. Alara felt a surge of hope. They were ready to take a stand. The next day dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the tension simmering beneath the surface. Alara and her team moved quickly, setting up the decoy in a nearby clearing while ensuring their defenses remained intact. "Let's make it look convincing," Alex said, her eyes focused as they arranged supplies and debris to attract the Vorath's attention. "We'll need to make some noise to draw them in," Samira suggested, her expression serious. "We can't let them think this is a trap until it's too late." "Agreed," Alara replied, her heart racing. "Once we've lured them in, we'll hit them hard. We can't give them a chance to regroup." As they prepared, the weight of the moment settled on Alara. They were putting everything on the line, and the outcome would determine their fate. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the landscape. Alara and her team worked tirelessly to finalize their decoy, an intricate web of traps and distractions designed to draw the Vorath away from their main defenses. The tension in the air was palpable as they prepared for the confrontation that could either lead to victory or defeat. "Is everything set?" Alara asked, glancing at Samira as they stood near the clearing where the decoy was situated. "Almost," Samira replied, her eyes scanning the surroundings. "We've got noisemakers rigged to go off when the Vorath approach. It should look like we're an easy target." "Good," Alara said, her heart racing. "We need to make it convincing. If they suspect a trap, we're done for." Alex, still nursing her injuries but determined to help, joined them. "What's the plan once we draw them in?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fatigue etched on her face. "We'll ambush them as they come through the clearing," Ilara explained, her mind racing through the details. "We'll have the locals positioned along the tree line. Once they're engaged, we'll flank them and hit hard." "Let's hope they take the bait," Alex said, determination glinting in her eyes. "If we can catch them off guard, we stand a chance." As they made their final adjustments, the tension only grew. Ilara could feel the weight of their decisions pressing down on her shoulders. This was not just about strategy, it was about survival. The locals gathered around them, ready to execute their plan. Ilara took a moment to address the group, her voice firm and steady. "Today, we're fighting not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has suffered under the Vorath's rule. We stand together, united, and we won't back down. Remember, we have the element of surprise on our side. Let's show them our strength." A cheer erupted from the crowd, a powerful wave of energy that surged through Ilara. She felt the fire of their resolve ignite within her, pushing her forward. "Let's move," she commanded, leading the group toward the decoy site. As they positioned themselves in the trees, Ilara's heart raced in anticipation. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins, the thrill of battle drawing near. Time passed slowly as they waited, the forest around them eerily quiet. Ilara kept her eyes trained on the path leading to the decoy, her senses heightened. Each rustle of leaves or distant sound sent her pulse racing. "We should have heard something by now," Samira murmured, her brow furrowed in concern. "What if they're not coming?" "Patience," Ilara replied, forcing herself to remain calm. "They'll come. They can't resist the opportunity to strike when they think they have the upper hand." Just as she finished speaking, a sound echoed through the trees, a rumble of engines and the clanking of armor. Ilara's heart leaped into her throat. "They're here," she whispered urgently, signaling to the others to remain silent. Through the foliage, she could see the Vorath convoy moving into view. Vehicles rumbled down the path, flanked by soldiers on foot. The sight sent a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. They were moving right into the trap. "Get ready," Ilara whispered, her heart pounding. "We wait for the signal." As the Vorath approached the clearing, the noisemakers set up around the decoy began to activate, emitting a series of loud, disorienting sounds. The Vorath soldiers halted, confusion spreading through their ranks as they surveyed the area. "Now," Ilara shouted, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The locals surged forward, moving in coordinated bursts from their hiding spots. Ilara led the charge, adrenaline propelling her as she rushed toward the nearest group of Vorath soldiers. The element of surprise was theirs, and they would make it count. Energy blasts erupted from their weapons, striking the unsuspecting Vorath. The soldiers were caught off guard, scrambling to respond as Ilara and her team closed in on them. "Flank them," Ilara shouted, her heart racing as she moved through the chaos. "Don't let them regroup." Samira and Alex fought alongside her, their determination unwavering. They pushed forward, driving the Vorath back into the clearing. The sounds of battle echoed through the air, mingling with the shouts of the locals as they engaged their enemies. In the midst of the chaos, Ilara spotted the Vorath leader from their last encounter. He was rallying his troops, attempting to regain control over the situation. Anger surged through her. He had brought them so much pain and suffering. "Let's finish this," Ilara shouted, locking eyes with Samira. "We take him out now." They surged forward together, weaving through the fray as they approached the Vorath leader. His expression twisted in disbelief as he saw them coming, panic flickering in his eyes. "Protect me," he shouted, raising his weapon to fire. But Ilara was faster. She fired a blast of energy that struck him square in the shoulder, sending him stumbling back. He cursed, regaining his balance, but Samira was right behind him. "Get down," Samira shouted, tackling him to the ground. Ilara followed suit, and they wrestled with him, struggling to gain the upper hand. The Vorath soldiers around them were still engaged in battle, but the tide was turning in favor of the locals. "Now," Alex shouted from a distance, her voice ringing out. Push forward. With a burst of strength, Alara managed to pin the Vorath leader down. This is for everyone you've hurt, she growled, her face inches from his. Fools, he spat, struggling against her grip. You think you can defeat us? We are the Vorath. Alara felt a surge of anger at his words. You've underestimated us for the last time, she hissed, raising her weapon to fire. Just as she was about to pull the trigger, a sudden explosion rocked the clearing, sending debris flying. Alara instinctively ducked, losing her grip on the Vorath leader. Chaos erupted around her as the battle intensified. Get back, Samira yelled, pulling Alara away from the blast zone. We need to regroup. Where's Alex? Alara shouted, scanning the chaos. The local forces were pushing the Vorath back, but the sudden explosion had thrown everyone into disarray. She was over there, Samira pointed, her voice urgent. We need to find her. Alara's heart raced as they maneuvered through the chaos, dodging debris and firing soldiers. The battle felt like a whirlwind, disorienting and chaotic. Alex, Alara shouted, her voice strained as she searched for her friend. Where are you? Just then, she spotted Alex a few yards away, struggling to get to her feet. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived as she saw the Vorath soldiers closing in on her position. Stay down, Alara yelled, sprinting toward Alex. I'm coming. She could feel the heat of battle all around her as she dove forward, reaching Alex just as the Vorath soldiers spotted her. Alara pushed Alex back down, shielding her with her own body as energy blasts flew overhead. Are you okay? Alara gasped, her heart pounding. Just a little bruised, Alex replied, grimacing. But we need to move. On my mark, Alara said, taking a deep breath to steady herself. When I say go, we make a break for it. You've got to trust me. Let's do it, Alex replied, determination shining through her pain. Go, Alara shouted, pushing off the ground as they bolted for cover. They ducked behind a large tree, breathless and panicked. Over there, Samira called, pointing to a group of locals forming a defensive line. We can join them. Move, Alara shouted, leading the way. They sprinted toward the defensive line, taking cover as they rejoined their allies. The battle raged on around them, the sounds of clashing weapons and shouts filling the air. The Vorath were beginning to falter, their formation breaking under the pressure of the locals' resolve. Keep pushing, Alara yelled, rallying those around her. We can't let them regroup. As they pressed forward, Alara caught sight of the Vorath leader attempting to rally his troops again. Anger surged within her, and she pointed him out to Samira and Alex. Let's finish this, Alara said, determination setting her jaw. We can't give him a chance to recover. Let's go, Samira replied, her voice fierce. They charged forward together, weaving through the fray. Alara's heart raced as they closed in on the Vorath leader. He was backed against a tree, desperate and angry, as he shouted orders at his remaining soldiers. Get them, he barked, but it was clear that his forces were wavering. Now, Alara shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. They fired their weapons in unison, the energy blast hitting their target with pinpoint accuracy. The Vorath leader staggered back, his eyes wide with shock. You'll pay for this, he spat, but Alara wasn't listening.